Catherine, are we ready?
Yes, anytime.
Okay. Well, your thing keeps saying connecting to audio, so I wasn't sure.
You know what? That was the other one. But I am here. If you see me visual, you don't see me.
Okay.
Oh,
No,
okay.
that's fine. I just want to make sure because I saw that, so I didn't want to.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. And in that case, it is 7:30 on May 5th, and we are calling the regular meeting of City Council to order. And I gotta put my agenda up where I can see it. And, all right, we get to do the, wow, how do we do this in unison, Pledge of Allegiance? So, if I could, may I ask Lou, as our vet, to please lead this.
Okay, everyone, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That wasn't too bad. I think it's getting smoother.
That was close.
We'll be experts just in time to not have to do it anymore.
There you go.
All right. Then, next on the agenda, Pastor Treshel, I see you are here.
Yes, thank you. I'll pray. Lord, we're so thankful today for your goodness and mercy. Thank you for many blessings, Lord. We ask today that you'd give us wisdom and guidance in our council. We ask you to bless our city. Lord, we understand we're in very different times, uncharted territory. And Lord, we're asking that you bless every family in Clawson, as every family in our state, every family in our country. We ask you to keep your hand of protection upon us, keep us healthy. We're asking, Lord, that you guide us in tonight's meeting. Touch those minds today that have to make decisions in this tough times. We're so thankful for the blessings of allowing us to gather together, even though we're not together in person. We are together in unity and together in spirit. We thank you for all things. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Catherine, if you could take roll call, please.
Yes. Councilmember Milan. Councilmember Milan. I saw her.
Sorry, mouse not working. Here.
No problem. Councilmember Moffitt.
Here.
Councilmember Phillips.
Here.
Councilmember Sampson.
Here.
Mayor Scripture.
Here.
All present.
All right. Next is a consideration of approving the consent agenda. However, I have a couple questions about the minutes, because there's two items on there, the minutes of the regular city council workshop and the minutes of the regular city council meeting, and then the city council workshop. I don't have any questions about the city council workshop, but I did have some on the first one. So in order to discuss that, it really should get pulled off of the consent agenda and moved. I'm guessing we would just do it right after we approve the other minutes. But I would need a motion to do so.
You want a motion just to separate the two and just make two motions?
I'm Renus, I think.
You don't, Madam Mayor, you don't have to do that. If any member of council, if any member of council wishes to pull them, you choose to pull them, and that's in her.
All right, well then I would like to pull the regular minutes and go ahead and leave the workshop minutes under the consent agenda. But then we're moving to.
Then you would simply approve the current consent agenda without the item that you've pulled, and then.
But not as listed. Okay.
Not as listed.
All right. Okay.
I'll make a motion. We approve the consent agenda with the one item.
I'll support.
Roll.
Okay.
Well, I guess we're not discussing because it's consent. So let's call that, and then we can. Yes. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Moffitt.
Yes.
Councilmember Phillips.
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson.
Yes.
Mayor Scripture.
Yes.
And Councilmember Milan.
Yes.
Okay, so we
All right.
did, oh, sorry.
All right, I'll
So-
make it a motion to approve the regular city council meeting of April 21st.
Need a
I'll
second.
support it for the sake of discussion.
Correct, thank you. All right, so then for discussion, the reason I asked to pull it is I'm not sure that something was accurately reflected on there. And I did not have time to go back and watch the actual tape of the meeting. So I wanted to ask and get some clarity. So let me kind of go through what I think might not be accurate and get some clarity. So at the last minute, this is regarding the last meeting. This is regarding the appointment of Matt Hodges to replace Aaron as the new rep for SACWA and SACRA. And I don't think that's an accurate representation of either what occurred or needed to occur based on the roles that SACRA and SACWA that each of them had, because they weren't the same. I'm sorry, that Mr. Irwin had. So, and there were some questions on the discussion around it, but there's nothing in the minutes, like I said. So I didn't have time to look at the tape. So I just want to back up a minute to give context to my question. On June 4th of 2019, Mr. Irwin was appointed as the representative to SACRA and Mr. Drinkwine as the alternate to serve as a term through June 30th, 2020. And at that same meeting, Mr. Drinkwine was appointed as a representative to SACWA and Mr. Irwin as the alternate for the term ending June 30th. So with Mr. Irwin's departure, Mr. Drinkwine would have became the representative on both committees, and council at that time did not appoint an alternate. So the actual minutes read that I'm sorry, I only have so many screens. I think the actual minutes read that we appointed Mr. Hodges as a representative, but I could have sworn that the discussion was alternate. And this came from Councilmember Moffitt and Councilmember Milan, and this is saying representative, so that's my first kind of question. And then my second question, and obviously with Mr. Drinkwine being furloughed, that left no representative, which is why we took that action. So my second question is, because again, I was trying to find this in the minutes, I think I might have misunderstood or not understood some of the comments that Councilmember Moffitt made. And so I just want to make sure I understand. So we might have to go back and redo that because I don't believe that was your intent. So hold on.
I've got it in front of me if you want it.
Well, no, okay, but we didn't. We did not say alternate, and I believe that's very specifically. Right. Okay, so I want to, all right. So that would be an error if, based on what I thought was voted. Hold on, please let me finish. And my question to Councilmember Moffitt that kind of revolves around all that is you had stated something to the effect, and I'm at, that Harry could or does or something volunteer for these committees, and that's what I thought I heard. And so I'm just wondering, could you kind of remind me of what you had said at the meeting about that, and then if we get to, I think we need to fix that.
Sure, I was asking for clarity about what we were asking because I asked several times, who's his backup? What happens? And there was no answer. There was no discussion of alternate or primary. Had we had that information, that would have been very beneficial to the conversation, but no one had that at the time. So what we ultimately, having gone back and listened to the council meeting, what we ultimately did decide that we were going to do was remove Aaron Irwin from both of those positions and put Mr. Hodges in that place, because we didn't have any of the information to a lot of those questions that I was asking at the time. But then I believe it was Lori who looked up and saw that Aaron Irwin, who's no longer employed with us, was still on the rolls as being part of those organizations. So we came to the conclusion that it was much more prudent to remove Aaron Irwin because he's no longer employed and put Mr. Hodges in those places.
And wasn't that 2 motions?
Well, yes, the first motion to remove, I believe, and also that was the minutes do not correctly record who made those motions and supported them. So Councilmember Sampson was the one who originally made the motion to remove Harry Drinkwine and put Matt Hodges in, and that was voted down, I believe. And I think that Councilmember Phillips was the ones who supported that. And then I believe Member Phillips made the second motion, right? And then it was supported to make that change, if I recall correctly.
Okay, so, and that sounds more accurate to what I thought I remembered. And what were you saying about him volunteering when we were talking about that, about Mr.
I was just asking for clarity because there was none. There was no.
Why would he volunteer?
You know, I don't recall the details of it, but we were asking for clarity around the circumstance, and we had none. It was on the agenda. There was no information about, if we had this backup and alternate thing, that would have made for a much more constructive conversation. So, I mean, if you're asking me to defend questions that happened in a different conversation, I can't recount them, but we
I'm not asking to defend anything. I was just trying to understand as part of the context, because we only have now, and again, I thought the motion was to make Matt alternate, not representative.
Information. We didn't have information about alternate and primary. That's what I was asking for. I asked several times, who's his backup? What happens when he's not there? And no one had that. If we had that, it would have been a much different conversation. So we couldn't have been discussing alternate or primary because those were the very questions I was asking at the time, and no one had the information.
No, I thought Lori said alternate and I thought she clarified alternate and primary.
No, she went on and clarified that the other person listed was Aaron Irwin, but she never assigned alternate and primary because we wouldn't have had that conversation about, I asked multiple times, who's his backup? And if we had the information about alternate and primary, that would have cleared that up, but no one had that at the time. So, I mean,
okay.
Conversation.
All right.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I think we should hold this off till next meeting.
Well, no, I don't think there's any issue.
There's a lot of confusion now, even in my mind. We talked about alternates, so I think let's look at the tape and then we'll come back and do this. Because I think these were, I'm kind of leaning towards what you're saying, so I think let's listen to it and then put it back on the agenda.
But Councilmember Sampson, it's not so much but in the meantime, we do not have a representative, and we have SACRA and SACRA meetings between now potentially and the next time. So that would leave those without any representative. So I don't think we can do that for that reason only. Otherwise, you know, sure, whatever. But I'm not sure we can, because that would leave no representative on either of those.
Is that something we can do on unfinished business?
Yeah, I can make a motion later on to approve.
Absolutely. Yes, we can move that to unfinished business.
Let's do that.
Yes, Councilmember Milan.
This whole thing came up because you said you were contacted by one of the boards to ensure that there was someone on, representative from the city council. Is that true?
No, not a representative from city council. No, ma'am.
Well, I mean, no, representative from the city. Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
Yes,
So the person or whomever you were contacted, they didn't at the time say you have Aaron Irwin listed. He's no longer with you. And Mr. Drinkwine is on furlough. Like, how do they know he's on furlough? I could see at that time, if they contacted us, we should have addressed both at the same time. So
my understanding is what happened is because they didn't contact us about Mr. Drinkwine being on furlough. What happened was Mr. Hodges, knowing that Mr. Drinkwine was on furlough, contacted them to ask the question about the meetings because Mr. Drinkwine would not be available, and they responded to Mr. Hodges that had to be a council, if Mr. Drinkwine was not going to be there, and if Mr. Hodges wasn't on there at all, that the council would have to make that vote. So he let us know because it had to go on the council agenda in order for that to happen. That is how that came up. It was simply nobody, Mr. Drinkwine wasn't here. There, obviously Mr. Irwin wasn't here. Someone needed to be a representative. Mr. Hodges reached out to them to say he's on furlough. He said, you need a council thing. So that is why that came.
Okay, that's fine. We just need, we clearly Aaron can't do it, and there's nothing wrong with not doing it. So however we need to redress this, let's just address it.
Well, we can go ahead and move it to unfinished as was requested, and we can come back to it, so we can let, move ahead with the other items on the agenda. That's fine, if that's what we prefer to do.
Thanks.
Let's finish at the end of the meeting or later in the meeting.
And under unfinished business. Do I need a motion for that, Mr. Newshaven? No? Okay. All right.
Reese,
We're
it's
gonna
very
move that to unfinished business.
It's very hard to understand you, Reese. Are you too far from your mic?
No, I'm right in my computer. I'm right up on my computer.
Okay. You lean back sometimes to make, you can't be heard. You're muffled.
Okay. I'll stay up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, in that case, we are going to move that to unfinished business, in which case, the next item on the agenda is a presentation and update from State Representative Padma Krupa. The floor is yours.
Thank you all for having me. It's been difficult these last few weeks, couple months actually. I was here a few months ago at Council Chamber. This is my first time doing it virtually with all of you, so thank you for having me. Padma Krupa, and if anybody needs to reach me, Padma Krupa at house.mi.gov, 517-373-1783. We get our voicemails and our emails while we're working from home. My staff are both working remotely, as am I, although I have gone to the Capitol, as you probably all saw. We were in the Capitol on Thursday with some tension, let's put it that way. However, that is not the primary reason I go to Lansing. I go to Lansing to legislate. And so what have we been working on since March 17th or March 10th, when the first coronavirus incident happened in Michigan? On March 11th, what prior week was Employee Appreciation Day, and I had introduced a bill on March 11th. I sought co-sponsorships to restore the Paid Sick Leave Act to what the citizen-led initiative in 2018 had wanted. There's specific numbers on how many hours, but basically over 300,000 Michiganders had signed a petition to ensure that they could earn paid sick leave, because it is a challenge when you're working and you're sick. And so we had introduced it with the view of it being around employee appreciation. However, on March 11th, the day that we introduced the bill number is 5628. That was the day also that many studies came out, and there's an op-ed in the Detroit papers around the importance of paid sick time, especially during the time of this coronavirus crisis. So that became sort of a talking point. It's been on NPR, but I do think that it underscores the importance of having paid sick time for working people. In addition to that, we have been responding to constituents. As you know, the unemployment claims have gone through the roof, much more than existed during the time of our 2008 recession. So we have been responding to constituent concerns. Constituents write about both against the governor's executive orders and for the governor's executive orders, but the ones that we are trying to respond to as quickly as possible are the ones where they need help with unemployment insurance, when there's an issue with it, or even just getting it processed. If any constituent has an issue, we encourage them to reach out to our office on the unemployment. Again, Padma Krupa at house.mi.gov. 517-373-1783. We have also been to Lansing to see if we could introduce a resolution to do what you are doing, which is act remotely. That resolution, House Resolution 245, has not been discharged to committee. We've tried once. Next time we have session, we will try again. So far, there has not been any resolution. I believe on Monday there will be some discussion about armed people being allowed into the Capitol, because it was very scary to be inside the chamber and have the people that were angry with weapons outside. We are also providing resources to people on what the Federal CARES Act does. I have been in constant contact with both Mayor Scripture as well as Mayor Baker of Troy, and let them know as things develop, as things are rolling out. As soon as I know, I try to let them know if there's anything major, so that they will then disseminate that information. We've also had a lot of virtual town halls. We did a virtual town hall initially on just coronavirus and the response to it, with Rosemary Bayer, who's on the Senate side, as well as Brenda Carter on the House side. She represents the area that former Representative Tim Greimel was term limited out of. So then we did a town hall on, most recently, on small business and the need for small business to have access to, there's several websites on the Michigan.gov has the coronavirus website. So michigan.gov/coronavirus, which provides resources both for employees, for individual citizens, but also for employers. There are now federal funds that are available for small businesses. And one of the interesting things that I have statistics on that I'd like to read to you, so hopefully I can read to you while I'm looking at the email. The governors did a presentation on April 27th about who is reopening how she's reopening the economy. Obviously, just as she's not making health decisions in a vacuum about the public health crisis, she's not making decisions about reopening the economy in a vacuum. And she has appointed several people to lead this effort. One of them is Nancy Schlichting, who is the retired CEO of Henry Ford Health Systems, and Jerry Anderson, the executive chairman of DTE. There is a 12-member healthcare advisory group, as well as a 15-member business advisory group, and that consists of people from Small Business Association of Michigan, small business owners, all the way to Mary Barra, the CEO of General Motors. The other information that we have is that we are doing something called a Downtown Business Coalition. We are developing plans for jumpstarting our economy, because we know it's Main Street and our local small businesses that are innovative and responsive to restarting our economy. And we want them to be at the table and be part of the discussions. And I've been speaking with Joan and again, Mayor Scripture, about the Downtown Business Coalition and our listening tour, because we are looking for answers from the business owners themselves. What do you need to reopen safely, but also to reopen so that you can be successful? Because when small business is successful, communities are successful. The first listening tour stop was in Plymouth. Lori Pahutsky, Representative Pahutsky, Representative Kolazar, and a couple of other colleagues on that side of Metro Detroit had theirs. We are doing with Representative Ellison, who is the one that I did the event, the virtual town hall earlier, and Representative Ellison, Representative Wittenberg, who represents downtown Ferndale, Representative Brenda Carter, who represents downtown Pontiac, and obviously Royal Oak and Clawson, near and dear to my heart. I want to see Clawson downtown come back strong, and so I will be working very hard to engage with people to find solutions. And so I want people to register. The one that we have coming up next week is Monday, May 11th at 2 p.m. And the website for that is tinyurl.com/dbclistens-May 11th. So the Downtown Business Coalition is listening. So it listens-May 11th. And again, I will get that out to you so that you can share that on the Clawson's website or anywhere else The Paycheck Protection Program, many businesses in Michigan did apply for what the Federal CARES Act provided. Cranes actually reported on this. 43,438 Michigan businesses received funds from that first round. That was up until, I think, April 15th. However, the Bloomberg did report that harder hit states like us and New York and California did not do as well as states like Nebraska. Nebraska got enough money to cover 82% of their eligible payrolls. We only got 55%. We ranked 35th in the country in terms of what we received as a state. Hopefully we'll be doing better in this second round. If you need any information from me, please don't hesitate to reach out. Michigan.gov/coronavirus has a lot of resources, both for employees and employers, also where you can get testing, because that is one of the most critical aspects of how we will reopen, is making sure that we are able to test the maximum number of people. And so that is where sort of we're stuck until we can test. But as you know, construction restarts this week. Soon we'll see other sectors. Real estate is reopening as well, day after tomorrow. And we will continue to see a safe reopening of our economy. Michigan.gov/staywell has health resources, mental health resources, because we are finding people are anxious. We have never been through a pandemic before, and hopefully we'll never go through one again. But as we go through this, we really want to make sure that people stay well. There are applications, peer-to-peer counseling, 1-888-PEER-753 is the phone number for a peer-to-peer warm line, not a hotline. There's obviously websites, hotlines like the National Crisis Hotline, the Suicide Prevention Hotline, but this is a Michigan hotline that's open from 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. every day. It's 888-PEER-753. And if you go to michigan.gov/staywell, you will find additional resources. If you are fortunate and you are in a position to help others, please go to michigan.gov/fightcovid. Because that is what we are, fight COVID. Fight COVID-19 or fight COVID. This is where you can go if you have resources that you want to provide. If you want to be a medical volunteer, maybe you're a retired nurse, you want to volunteer to help older adults, you want to request assistance, you can go there as well. And there are election workers sign up. As we know, we had our election today in many other parts of the state. Our August election is coming up. One of the things that I am working on is that I am working on vote from home legislation to expand what Voters Not Politicians did. There are additional ideas that we have from the National Vote at Home Institute. Since the Civil War, people have been voting by mail. And so if this is what we need to do to keep people safe, this is what we can do, is to expand vote from home capability and make sure that we have the administrative infrastructure in place to do that as well. Again, we will be working in partnership with our federal representatives. I've been in contact with both Senator Stabenow and Peters, as well as Congresswoman Stevens. Actually, Slotkin has also reached out to me on a couple of issues, and also Congressman Levin. I don't know if this is a question and answer format, but I'm going to stop there. I think I've talked long enough. Hopefully you got some information, and we can go back and I can send you all this in a typed format so that you can then distribute to anybody.
Actually, if anybody does have any questions for Representative Koopa, please. Okay. Yes, Kathy, go ahead.
I just have a quick question. What's the difference between voting from home and an absentee ballot? Isn't it basically the same thing?
It is. People request absentee ballots, but really the idea is that you can vote from home.
So, and anybody can obtain an absentee ballot now. So why is this such a big stinkeroo?
It's actually not a stinkeroo. I can send you some information on the difference between making it a vote at home state, versus what we have now, which is the permanent absentee. We don't have permanent absentee. You have to request the absentee ballot, but there is, the lawyer here might be able to tell you better, but I know that if you look at the Vote at Home Institute's sort of simplified brochure of all the legal issues around it, they have like 5 things, and we've done 1, 2, and 3. We haven't done 4 and 5. Does that make sense? Renus, do you want to add to that? Are you informed about law? I'm not a lawyer. I just want to represent people, and so.
Don't we all? I think I also do represent people. Ultimately, though, it will be about convenience and you know, between, you know, the major difference between the two, both absentee ballots as well as, you know, the being a true stay-at-home, you know, vote from home state. And we're not quite there yet. One of the main differences left between our state and other states is the fact that we have to request it as opposed to it being there every time we see fit, obviously, to vote. We would have to request it every time we go to the ballot prior to casting our vote. So that's going to be ultimately the main difference.
Except the issue is, the concern is voter fraud, and there's no way to ensure that there isn't any. So that's the ultimate problem people are having with it right now, just for fairness.
Okay. I will say, though, that there are many other states that are doing this. Arizona, Montana, Nevada, New Jersey, Virginia. This has to do with permanent absentee status. That's level 4. And then level 5, Colorado, Hawaii, Oregon, Utah, and the state of Washington. In certain other states, counties and municipalities have taken this level full vote at home state or vote at home jurisdiction. So every active registered voter automatically gets a ballot delivered for every election. That's the highest level of absentee ballot. We don't have that right now. We print the ballots, we just don't mail them home. And as far as voter fraud, I think the issue is that we are able to do it for all our military. So what is the procedure that we do there, and then apply that for everyone else as well?
Does anybody else have any questions for Representative Krupa? So actually, I would like to just say 2 things. Well, I have one thing to say and one question that you may or may not be able to answer. So I would like to thank you, because you have been extremely accessible. You have been, every chance you get, texting, emailing, letting us know what's going on. I know that you've worked with Joan also. You were talking about the business stuff, and I really appreciate it. I mean, I know everybody's feeling a lot impotent in this, because we know some of these things are here. We know, and we can communicate it, but accessing it then becomes a challenge. But we appreciate, I appreciate very much how accessible you've been. And I have a question, because this is killing me. I know that right before this COVID hit, you had, what's the word I'm looking for? You had award, you had secured money for Clausen, and then COVID hit and the money's gone, and I understand that. But so what was it for?
Okay,
what
so
did we get?
So I have to not get emotional, because this is, reality is that people are not able to pay their mortgages, and so that I didn't. So let me tell you, when we left on March 17th, we did our final supplemental, because the budgets were passed last year, but then there were additional monies, and so that final supplemental budget was passed in March of this year. And so out of that, I had asked, like I asked last year, I asked for projects from Kathy Leanhouse. I asked for different people had asked. And I know that I reached out to whoever was in the city manager's office back last winter. So 2019, February, March. And I believe I might have even reached out to Scott asking for ideas. I know I reached out to Chief Nastasi and Troy. The one thing they gave me in this year's supplemental was $100,000 for Clausen DDA for development. And I was so excited.
Right to the heart.
But then the governor had to find money to respond to
know.
COVID, and
I
she
know.
line item vetoed so many things to create $80 million that we used to respond to COVID. And
I understand, and we understand.
I will continue, and I tell you, this whole thing with the Downtown Business Coalition, this for me has been a labor of love, because I walk down downtown Clawson and I know that that is what young people are looking for to move back to the state, because we need them to move back to the state. They are looking for walkable communities like Clawson. And I am very concerned that we come back on our main streets so much all across the state of Michigan. So I'm partnering with people from Muskegon, from Grand Rapids, talking about how I want small business owners who put their whole livelihood, their retirement, they pull out of their retirement and they start a business, sometimes with their child or with a friend. And here we are. I was on the first call I was on, the first town hall. There was a woman who was planning to launch a business in Clarkston, who had pulled out from her retirement and had everything. Where is she going to prove that she has an income when she's launching in the first week of April? I have not been, you understand we have never been in this situation before. Now, I went to Lansing to advocate for the well-being of our communities. I really wanted to advocate for, increased municipal revenue sharing, because I know how hard we were all hit in our local communities back in 2008, when pretty much revenue sharing was slashed. And I know what's happening now. And so if we don't.
That's why I want to thank you, because I know what happened, and I understand the governor did the right thing, but nonetheless, you advocated for us, and if this had not have happened, we would have had that, and it does not take that away. So thank you for that. But Joan and I were dying because we knew you'd said something, and then you hinted it might be DDA, and that's all we heard, and then boom. So at least we know now. So that's all. I just had to know because I was dying, but thank you for advocating.
I hope none of you have lost anyone to COVID-19. I know that by zip code, I can see that there are people in Troy and Clawson that we have lost to COVID because of the Oakland County website and the information that they have. Just know that every time I go into those chambers, I sat diagonal to Representative Isaac Robinson. And every time I go into those chambers and I see his desk draped in black, it's hard. And so I hope that anyone, please know that my sympathy is with you. I feel it very personally, what COVID has done. And I hope that we continue to see a decrease.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything else?
You did.
You
I just
do?
want to thank you also, Padma. But this is not to do with the state level. I'm just questioning why we are not getting any updates from the county level. I would like to see maybe an update from the county level as to what the county is doing, maybe at the next meeting.
Kathy?
I can.
But if I could real quick, Kathy, I just got an email. It was in my inbox this morning. Mr. Coulter's office reached out and asked if he could attend the meeting, but obviously that was this morning, so clearly, and so we just need to get back with him. But they have reached out to come and give an update, and we just got to follow up, and I expect he would be on the next agenda. I mean, assuming.
Okay, I guess I'm just questioning why our Oakland County representative isn't following up here, so.
I just
Thank
want
you.
to also add that Andy Meisner, Oakland County Treasurer, was one of my go-tos, because when we issued the $150 million, $10 million of it went to MEDC for small business loans. And so each county was administering the loans to the local small business. And so I actually got in touch with Andy Meisner to talk to Joan about some of the local businesses and also some of the issues that people raised that the banks weren't helping. And so that's one of the reasons that we had the fintech companies. I know I told Joan about a couple of our local businesses that could not apply for the loans, had to apply through like PayPal or Intuit or somebody like that because their bank was a community bank. And so now they've expanded on the second round of federal loans. But I think that we can't print money at the state. We have a balanced budget. So we're really relying on resources to come from the federal level. So please advocate for local government funding. I know that you have a good representative in the legislature from Michigan, Dan Kildee. Congressman Dan Kildee feels as strongly as I do about giving money back to the locals. And so please write a letter to him as city council. I think it would be very helpful.
If that is all, thank you, Padma, very much. If it's okay, we can move on to the next agenda item, and you can move on to probably another meeting. You're muted, Padma.
I finally made dinner tonight, and so I didn't check my email for the last 2 hours, and I have 130 emails, so I won't check emails.
Have fun with that. We'll leave you to it. All right, thank you very much. Okay, where am I? Hold on, sorry. Let me flip back up here. Next item on the agenda, sorry everybody, would be consideration of a proclamation recognizing Thursday, May 7th, 2020 as the National Day of Prayer.
I'll make that motion.
I'll support that motion.
Is there any discussion?
I just want to say, I know Susan Phillips and her team have worked really diligently to try and pull this National Day of Prayer together. And it's kind of disheartening as in all the things we want to celebrate this year, that it's been pushed to the side, and we have to celebrate it in a different way. But I just want to say that acknowledging God can be done anywhere by anyone, and COVID-19 can't erase that from any believer that wants to get out there and give praise and acknowledgement and thanks. So I'm thankful that we have people like Susan that are willing to champion something like this. And I'm also thankful that we have a city council that recognizes the importance of it. And I just want to say.
Anybody else?
Yeah. I just want to say I agree with it. I was doing the coalition prayer breakfasts for many, 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 many years, collating with the state. However, what I would like to see next year is the proclamation to be more inclusive. It's there's so many different kinds of people that celebrate and pray to so many different deities and stuff like that. I think it has to be more inclusive next year. And it obviously, this is a very Christian proclamation. And the bottom line is that anybody should be able to pray or to look up to whoever they choose. And next year, I'd like to see that included in a proclamation.
That could just be a separate event, because this is a Christian thing, and we want to uphold that, right? So anybody can bring anything forth, right? And we can support it accordingly, but we shouldn't have to diminish what this is in any way just to support other things. So.
Anybody else? So, oh, I'm sorry. Did someone? No? Okay, so I will say that I actually agree with Kathy, and in fact, I will be voting no on the proclamation. If it was framed to be inclusive of all residents, if it was framed to be people seeking solace and comfort according to their own faith and conscience, through prayer, meditation, any introspective method that they found was right for them, especially right now in this time of crisis. And if we were seeking for residents of Clawson to come together in solidarity to seek and share that solace with everybody and comfort, regardless of how they choose to worship, I would support a proclamation like this. And I would join my neighbors in that moment of shared grace, but that's not my interpretation of this proclamation. So I will be voting no, because I do strongly believe in inclusiveness. And is there anything you wanted to add, Mr. Nushai?
Madam Mayor, thank you. Obviously, the debate belongs to this council. My role as an attorney is to view this from a legal perspective. I share some of the concerns that Council Member Phillips shared as far as this specific proclamation of the way it's reiterated, in the sense that, you know, it feels like it is given a little more than we perhaps ought to be given in one particular religion, as opposed to being inclusive of all religions, and which is not simply you know, the desire of any one member of council, the desire of any one of us, is the mandate of law, the constitutional law that we have in place. Establishment Clause prohibits government, any entity of government, whether it be Congress or whether it be a small local body such as this one, from favoring one religion over the other or religion over irreligion. And our courts have grappled over a long period of time with these issues. I think ultimately we don't, you know, a government, you know, and this stems from case law, a government may invoke the divine through words, symbols, if they have religious and historical meanings, or faith-based solemnizing effects. And the process, you know, so long as they offer incidental benefits to any one particular faith, there's nothing particularly wrong with that. The courts have recognized that. Here, when I analyze this particular case, am I comfortable that we would not be incurring, which is my role, we would not be incurring any liability or anything like that? I'm comfortable with that. I don't think this in and of itself, as a proclamation, would cause the city to falter or anything of that nature. At most, we're proclaiming some incidental benefit to one specific religion on account of that first paragraph of the proclamation. Could I foresee liability? Perhaps, but highly doubtful, I guess. Are we offending anyone enough to be able to incur a lawsuit? Probably not. I hope not. I don't think it's meant in that spirit, certainly. I think it's meant in a positive fashion. I wish, much like Councilmember Phillips, it had been done even more so. I think the more the merrier. Ultimately, though, the First Amendment of the Constitution prohibits governments from making laws abridging the freedom of speech. As written, you know, that First Amendment doesn't necessarily empower individuals to abridge the speech of government. So governments can actually speak their minds and they can advocate, and this is one way of doing so. So I think that's my 2 cents on the matter.
Just for the record, we give proclamations for a lot of things that people have differing opinions on and differing views, and we don't ever talk about those things, right? Like, there's a lot of things that are not of personal interest to me that we have had proclamations on over the years. This is just accepting a group's long established tradition to honor this one day in prayer. There's nothing that's prohibitive for anyone who is outside of Christianity from doing the same thing on this day or any other, or from bringing forth a proclamation that would say something along the lines of something that they support. I am always going to stand up for everyone to have rights to represent those things that are important to them. I just hope that Clausen never loses the fact that this is a deep tradition in our community. God is paramount in our federal government, and I know everyone believes differently. I would never try and encourage someone to believe the way I do, but I wouldn't want it belittled either, because I don't sit and belittle any of the other proclamations and events that I necessarily support either. But everyone has the right to vote however they want to.
There was no way was I belittling anything. I'm Catholic. So, I mean, I'm as Christian as you get, but in my opinion. But all I'm asking is next year, there be some inclusivity. I have friends that are Hindu. I have friends that are Buddhist. They have their prayer sessions. Muslims, all those people pray. They just pray a different way. And I just think if you're going to have a national day of prayer, it has to be for everyone. And when I go back to the coalition breakfasts, we had representatives from every single one that we could get at every single prayer meeting, and they gave their share. That's all I mean. I'm not belittling it in any way, shape, or form. I'm just strictly saying next year, if we do this again, that it needs to be more inclusive, that anyone can spend that day praying or whatever they do. That's all.
Anybody else? All right, in that case, Ms. Christian, if you could call roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Phillips. Councilmember Phillips?
Yes, with a little hesitation, but
Okay, that's okay. Okay, Councilmember Sampson.
Yes.
Mayor Scripture.
No.
Councilmember Milan.
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett.
Yes.
All right, the motion has passed and the proclamation, oh, shoot, I lost my, okay, there it is. Recognizing Thursday, May 7th, 2020 as National Day of Prayer has passed. And I believe next on the agenda is, excuse me, consideration of establishing rules and procedures for special events during and in the immediate aftermath of the coronavirus pandemic. If I could get a motion for that, please.
Mayor, I move that the council direct the administration to adopt a set of rules and procedures ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of the public prior to issuing permits for special events during and in the immediate aftermath of the corona pandemic.
I'll support that.
All right. Mr. Nushai, do you want to give us any, because that sounds like a legally kind of stuff. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Madam Mayor, very briefly, I fielded a couple of questions with respect to this issue, and I know obviously that Chief Cervello has done a lot of work with respect to the coronavirus in his position, obviously both as chief as well as emergency coordinator. This is one of those situations where I think the city will be faced with the realities of coronavirus both now and in the immediate future as far as social distancing is concerned. And we will have some events that have been canceled, some events that I think hopefully in the future we would like to have, the city would like to have, and would like to have, as much participation as humanly possible, obviously considering, the current environment. And this hopefully will give us, the ability to get together between the chief and everybody else that's involved in the city, to be able to craft some sort of set of guidelines for all the people who have events coming up, hopefully in the near future, to be able to have some sort of streamlined process where instead of having individual questions and answers set up through individual members such as Chief Cervello, we have something that we can hopefully guide the process through.
Can I ask a question? Well, actually, let me turn the floor, if anybody else has a question, and then I'll ask. I'm sorry. Would anybody else have a question on this or any discussion on this?
Hello. We'll be able to approve these when they're done?
Absolutely. I think, I think my 2 cents of the matter, as soon as like I said, as this came to be in my sphere, in my orbit, I thought, the best way to handle it is to have council direct administration to be able to put something together. And I envision, obviously, Chief Cervello, everybody in his team, police, fire, everybody else get together and put something together under the guidance of the CDC, which I've included as part of your packet. Then we'll get whatever we prepare, we'll present it obviously to the council for your review.
Okay, that's what I was hoping for.
So my question is, because this is a very fluid situation, and I read the information that you included from the CDC, and like I said, it's just fluid. So I assume that as opposed to we're going to do A, B, C, and D, you're looking for more of a policy or something like that that says, whenever the application is submitted, we're going to apply whatever the CDC guidelines are at that point in time, because there's no other way to really do it, right? Because
I think you're absolutely correct. Ultimately, I don't think we're going to have a stringent set of rules or a rule book with respect to this fair city of ours over and beyond anything that's happening outside of the city. I think some sort of a guideline to pattern ours. I presume we may have something specific. I don't know. They'll depend on the conversations, obviously, that Chief Cervello, fire, other entities in the city will have. But overall, that's the very idea, as I envision.
thank you.
Of course. Can't hear you, Paula.
Unmute. There we go. This is for rules and procedures only, not to establish a timeline to say we're going to cancel all things or prohibit all things from this point to this point, correct?
No, I wouldn't. Obviously, that will be only the purview of this council. We wouldn't be able to do that by way of rules and procedures. These are only guidelines.
Thank you.
Of course.
Oh, I am on. Okay. So I got a couple questions because was trying to look at the process and I actually couldn't quite figure out. So permits now. So if someone wants to have a special event now, because I went back and I looked at some minutes to see how certain special events were. I saw some minutes where there was, all the stuff about the permit, they had to get a bond, they had to do this, they had to do that. I mean, like the pug rescue a while back and some things like that. And then I've seen special events that had none of that stuff attached to it. And so, I mean, what is the process? If someone submits for, and I guess special event being kind of relative, because anything that someone is using city property for, like a park event or anything like that, that's, I mean, clearly we would have reason to have, they sign contracts. I've seen them sign agreements, but then I've seen other events without any of that. So what is the process right now? How does that work and why is that inconsistent?
Should not be inconsistent so long as, if we're utilizing my thoughts on the matter, every event that takes place in the city, and I don't mean every event, meaning every graduation party for a high school senior. I mean everything that requires our property, city services should go through, must go through a permitting process and must go through, contractual agreements, of course, because at the very least, obviously, we would require insurance and indemnifications and the million things that would go along with such an event. To the extent that there's been any events that fall under this particular category that we're speaking of, and they have not gone through proper permitting, I can't answer as to why, but I can tell you that it's incorrect and it shouldn't be done. It should not have been done as such.
And I mean, we haven't had any special events because of COVID. So I don't think that's happened. I'm just saying. And so what this would do is simply temporarily and at least throughout whenever, you know, the thing's over, because there are no dates. But what this would do would just add one little thing that says, how are you going to ensure that your event protects the health and safety of our residents and anybody else who's attending that event within this parameter of COVID right now until that's no longer necessary. So we're asking to have someone, when they apply for their event, when they get their permit, temporarily we're asking them to also account for how they're going to meet those guidelines, you know, with this, whatever they are at the time, I think is what you said, spacing or masks or whatever's going on, and whatever.
I think for so long as we have the emergency in place, and so long as you have an emergency proclamation in place, we must have something. I think it's incumbent upon us as an administration to provide you with something to be able to rely on, to know that basically the health, safety, welfare of your citizens is in good order for so long as this is ongoing.
Okay. Does that, all right, that answers my question. Does anybody else have anything to add to that, or?
Yeah, Madam Mayor and Council, if I could, please. So most of these events that happen, we have a pre-event anyway. So what would happen now is we would roll out what the CDC guidelines are at the time, which makes it a fluid situation. I'm working with the school district right now on what they have their clap out day, like the seniors' last day. They're trying to plan a graduation. So one is in May, one is in June. Those could have two different on what is allowable at the time, but that's why this is a fluid situation. We couldn't put A through Z exactly. And even after the emergency is lifted, to be honest with you, for the next year or two, we may be looking at different things and how we have those pre-event meetings and what is allowable and not allowable. So I think if we use whatever we establish as a guideline, it gives us a little teeth when we tell someone, no, you can't do that now, but you can do this, this, and this is why. And I think that would be a huge asset to us when we're dealing with these event coordinators onto why we have putting in those rules and limitations. And I think it'd be, it's obviously for the safety and the welfare of the citizens and the people involved, nothing more.
Anybody else? Thank you, Chief Sarvello.
Yep.
All right, in that case, Ms. Christian, could you call roll call, please?
Yes, Councilmember Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Scripture,
Yes.
Councilmember Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Phillips.
Yes. Yes.
Motion passed.
All right, so we have, council has moved to direct administration to adopt set of rules and procedures for health, safety, and welfare prior to issuing permits for special events based on best practices. Well, it doesn't say that, but yes, during and the immediate aftermath of the corona pandemic. All right, then next on the agenda is consideration of a resolution requesting reimbursement from the Oakland County West Nile Virus Fund for the purchase of West Nile virus larvicide briquettes.
I move to approve the resolution requesting reimbursement for the Oakland County West Nile Virus Fund for the purchase of West Nile virus larvicide briquettes.
Support.
Mr. Hodges, I believe that's your department. Did you want to add anything for that or tell us any wonderful thing about larvicide briquettes we should know?
Well, the only thing is that it only kills the larvicide. It does not kill the adult mosquitoes.
So what does that mean? Get them before they get wings?
About 24 hours. So if they lay eggs, it kills the eggs.
What's our match?
The cost of the program this year was roughly $5,300, of which we're getting back $1,524.
So where do these get put, Matt?
Into all the catch basins in the city.
Oh.
And then if any private property has them, we also put them in those catch basins also.
When do you start?
It's already done. It's a 180-day briquette slow release tablet.
All right, so what we want is apparently reimbursement. Okay.
Correct.
All right, in that case, thank you for that for that explanation or what, and can I get a motion then for that?
You got a motion in a
Yeah,
second.
let's see. Yeah.
Did we?
Yeah.
I thought I just read it. Who was the motion in the second? Oh, sorry.
You and Paula.
Listen, I guess I don't guess I missed the part where we were asking for reimbursement. Okay, sorry. My confusion. All right, well, in that case, unless anybody has any other questions or discussion, speak now. Anybody worried that we don't want to kill the larvae, so we don't want money back? Okay, I thought we might. All right, Ms. Christian, could you do roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor Scripture,
Yeah.
Councilmember Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Phillips,
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson.
Yes.
Motion passed.
All right, thank you. All right, so we have resolved to request reimbursement from Oakland County West Nile Virus Fund for the purchase of those West Nile virus larvicide briquettes that are out there happily killing all of the mosquito larvicide as we speak. All right, next on the agenda is consideration to accept the letter of resignation from Matt Cook from the Planning Commission and ZBA. For those of you who don't know, Matt's wife is in the Coast Guard, and she was relocated to Traverse City. I'm sure that's horrible for them, awful. But they are moving then to Traverse City, and obviously if you're not here, and he also resigned from the Parks and Rec Board. His wife was on there. But clearly if you're not here, you cannot serve, and so I'm asking for a motion to accept his letter of resignation.
I'll make that motion, Mayor, that we accept the resignation of Matt Cook from the Planning Commission. And I'd like to say that getting to know Matt very little, but he was so professional and so bright, and I'm really sorry to see him go. I would like to see more Matt Cooks on our boards and commissions.
I'll
I'll
support
second the
that.
motion.
Could you add and the ZBA
Yes,
effective
sorry.
May 1st?
And the ZBA.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we got to support, right?
Yes, Phillips.
All right. Does anybody else have anything on that? And I agree. I'm going to miss Matt. I think he was an amazing asset for Clausen and his wife. I really appreciate the fact they jumped in and participated in our civic life. It was nice to see. So if there's nothing else, Ms. Christian, could you call roll call on that, please?
Yes, Councilmember Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Phillips,
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson,
Yes.
and Mayor Scripture.
Yes. All right. We have accepted the letter of resignation for Matt Cook from Planning Commission and the ZBA effective May 1st, 2020. And then therefore next on the agenda is consideration of the appointment of Mr. Ed Sanaki to serve on the Planning Commission and to serve on liaison between the Planning Commission and the ZBA. And I'm sure as many of you know, Mr. Sanaki has been, I served with him on the ZBA for when I was there. He has been on the ZBA, I thought he said like 19 years or some crazy number like that, but a long time. Let's go with a long time. And Mr. Sanaki's family also, by the way, is extremely, for years, has been participating in working the elections as poll workers as a family, which I think is an amazing also display of civic duty. But nonetheless, he has agreed to act as that liaison between the two things because obviously we lost that liaison with Matt Cook's resignation. So if I may, if someone could make that motion, please.
I will make the motion that we appoint Ed Sarnaki to serve as on the Planning Commission and to serve as a liaison between the Planning Commission and the ZBA, and thank him for all these years of service and his willingness to take on yet one more task for Clausen.
That is an
Oh, am I on mute?
No, you're good. No, you're good. That was an awesome motion. Thank you. Can I get a second?
Support.
Any discussion, any questions, anything? Were you raising your hand, Sue, or?
Nope, just unmuting, because I
Okay.
know it's gonna come to me one of the first ones.
Okay. Anybody have anything on that then, or can I go ahead and do roll call on that? All right. Ms. Christian, could you roll call that, please?
Sure. Councilmember Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Phillips,
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Scripture,
And I went and muted. Yes.
and Councilmember Milan.
Yes, and thank you for being muted.
Okay.
It made me feel better.
All right. So we have moved and appointed, we've approved the appointment of Mr. Snaki to the Planning Commission and to serve as board liaison, or as liaison between the Planning Commission and the ZBA. And I am very excited that, you're right, Paul, I agree that he took this on to do that, because we needed that liaison role, and he's got tons of institutional history. So I appreciate that he did that. Thank you. All right, where am I here? Actually, I have an unusual question. Sorry, folks. I really have to take a 1 minute break. Kinda gotta.
Okay.
So, do I need a motion for that, or can we just take a quick 1 minute break?
Go.
No, you can put us,
Thanks.
you can put us in recess for 1 minute.
Recess 1 minute.
We're timing you.
Good, she's gone. We can talk about her. Just kidding.
Okay.
All I can say is, wow, that was so much easier than having to do that in council. Members. All right. Thank you for the recess. Where are we? Let's see here. Next on the agenda, we have the consideration of the appointment of Lori Fisher as who is our finance director currently, as interim city manager, based on the recommendation of Assistant City Manager and Police Chief Scott Sarvello.
And Madam Mayor, I move that we appoint Lori Fisher as interim city manager based on the recommendations of the chief.
I'll support.
You meant from the chief, not to the chief. Right?
Recommendation of the chief.
Of the chief, okay. Gotcha.
I value his opinion a lot.
Well, I'm opening the floor for discussion, so.
So my question, and I don't know, I think Lori's on the call, right? So it's either to Lori or Scott. I don't know if you had a conversation as you were thinking about suggesting her. Is from her resume that Scott sent. She's got several jobs, and so I assume you have a bunch of part-time gigs. And my question is, given that this is an interim appointment, how do you plan to adjust your time to be able to meet the demands of this interim city manager position?
So I currently have one other job. It is technically part-time. However, I have a great deal of flexibility. So I do not have set hours that I have to work. I'm already working for the city probably somewhere between 35 hours a week to 40. I have been for the last couple months. So I'm thinking there's so much duplication in what we have to do over the next few months that, of course, with Chief Sorello's help, and we also have, our department heads are very strong. So I think we can make this work. Keeping in mind it's an interim position, so I think we'll have somebody else on board in a few months and be able to move along in that direction. But I think it makes sense from a cost perspective. I think it makes sense from a time management perspective. But I would intend to be in the office, not all day, every day, but in the office 4 days a week.
You mean when you can actually come to an office?
Well, we've been in the office, so.
Well, I have a couple of concerns. My first concern is budgets are coming up, and since we are so challenged at this time, I know at our last meeting, someone made a comment that the city manager's job is really not that difficult. Well, that wasn't the word, that wasn't the terminology, but the city kind of runs itself. The department heads take care of everything, but we don't have a director of building and safety, and there are a lot of things that the city manager needs to address. But I think really at this point, I want our finance director to be able to focus 100% on our budgeting process that's coming up, and to work with our department heads to ensure that we are going to be able to do the best that we can with the resources that we have available to us. So that's my number one concern. And also, if you're going to continue with your other position, we're going to be really busy for the next couple of months for sure, doing budgets and getting everything up and running. I know you probably don't want to shortchange anyone. Are you up for that? And I'm sure you've thought of these things, but are you up for that? Because we need someone full-time, right? Fully dedicated to both tasks.
The budget is actually, the draft copy is ready to go out. So I was hoping to email that out in the next day or two. So when I'm saying that there's a lot of duplication in the roles over the next month and a half, that's what I'm talking about is if we brought somebody on board right now, whether it be another person, or I know that there's interim managers that you can hire through different companies. The learning curve that person's going to have to go through in the next 2 months, that just doesn't necessarily seem to be the best use of our time. We're ready to go with the budget. We're ready to go with the budget meetings. Once we get into June, we're working on the year end, the budget amendments. So in my opinion, it would slow us down at this point if we had to bring on somebody else and try to get them through that learning curve.
So what would your focus be as the city manager?
Well, I sent out a letter last week that kind of gave where we are at process-wise. So those items on there are the things that we really need to get done and accomplished in the next couple of months. And, yes, we have some other things that need to be handled as well, but those were my focuses. So obviously the budget that has to get done by June 30th. And we have a lot of things to, budget hearings and setting the millage rates that need to get done along the way.
So those are all financial tasks. So, and for the people who are listening or watching and did not get the letter, could you please just highlight what you feel the city manager functions would be that would be most imperative to address in the next coming months?
And I'm sorry, I don't have that letter in front of me at the moment. If I recall from it, some of the highlights were obviously getting us through the budget process. I think we have some strategic planning issues that we need to answer because there's a lot of things that are dependent on the budget. My greatest concern right now is the possible budget deficit that we're looking at because of the COVID crisis. Right now, I cannot put forth an accurate budget because we don't know what federal aid is coming to us. We don't know how deeply our revenue sharing is going to get cut. So budget is going to be a huge focus. We are looking anywhere between $150,000 to $500,000 deficit in the next fiscal year. across all departments. So this is going to be a moving target over the next couple months. Somebody's going to have to really be focused on, where we're at. And this is something that changes by the week. Every week, the state is coming out with different guidelines and offering something different. So we're really going to have to be paying attention to where we're at with numbers and then start adjusting our processes and looking to see where we're at along the way over the next 2-3 months.
So again, those are finance director issues, right? So, and I get that that's paramount for the whole entire city to address the financial portion of the city at this time coming up. But as the city manager, let's say you're taking off the finance hat, what are you going to do as the city manager to focus on the next several, if you're in the place for 4 or 5 months, what are you going to do as a city manager? What do you think those critical issues are that you would address?
It seems to me one of the other priorities that I mentioned in the letter were HR. We have some definite issues there. So we've already been working forward and trying to get some HR systems in place. Our building department needs a little bit of attention, obviously, without a director in that department. So just working with them, trying to make sure that we have all of our processes under control. I'd love to set up some community programs and kind of get some more input from the community.
I have one more concern. On the letter that was sent out from Matt Cook regarding Matt Cook's resignation, it was sent from Matt to Mayor Scripture. Mayor Scripture in turn sent it to Lori Fisher and Rennis Nushai. I'm curious why Lori Fisher and Rennis received that letter, because I would think chain of command would be to Catherine Christian, our city clerk, to be added into the minutes for the agenda. I don't know why Lori would have been included as the finance director, unless of course the decision had already been made to make her the acting city manager. I'd like that addressed, please.
And I, truthfully,
You're the recipient, so I'm assuming you don't need to address that question.
I'm sorry?
You were the recipient, so I'm assuming you don't need to address that question.
I'm assuming you're asking me the question.
Yes.
Yes. So there was actually 2 parts to that. Matt had originally left. Matt had originally resigned June 1st. And the planning session that was held last week, there was the Elliott Street came up. And in that session, it was discussed that in order to do the Elliott Street, they were going to have to go into the Zoning Board of Appeals. That was going to happen probably at the June meeting, which Matt would not be at. So that was an unanticipated thing. Lori was also on that meeting, and because I monitoring the same stuff. I'm sorry, not Lori. I lost my train of thought. In any event, Matt, I had to change it because I solicited Matt and I said, Matt, I need you to resign earlier because I need someone in place that can get that information. So when it goes to the ZBA, they've got the information from planning and to share that. So that's why that came to me from Matt. He actually changed his date to May 1st. And at the time, while we were building the agenda, I sent it to Rennis to make him aware that we were switching the dates because I had asked him that's okay, right? He can switch resignations. And I got to pull back in my memory now. And at the time, Lori, I believe you were working with Catherine on the agenda, and you had asked me if I had any items, and I said this has to get squeezed because it came last minute. And you said it has to come fast, and I flipped it out, right?
Correct.
So is it normal procedure to send items to the finance director to be implemented into the agenda?
No, it's not normal. At that time, Kathy Leanhouse was not available, and Catherine said it had asked for it to come in quickly, and I sent it to Lori, and I sent it to Rhonda to copy him on the thing, because Lori was helping Catherine prepare the agenda and getting the items lined up.
But you didn't send it to Catherine and all other.
No, I just said, no, I did
We
not.
look at recent correspondence. Most of our correspondence has come from Chief Sarvello. And I'm not trying to be picky. I'm just trying to say, January, we lost a city manager and there was a plan in place. Recently lost a city manager, totally different reason. But when I looked at this, I said, oh, how convenient. Lori's getting the email. We get a message from our chief of police who says that he fully supports her as the next person. That is his recommendation. As we discussed in the last meeting, it is nobody's recommend. I mean, I guess we can take recommendations from anybody if one has any. I actually have one. I'd like to recommend that we appoint. I'd like to recommend that we appoint Nick Stepnitz as our acting city manager. He served in the department for a little while. He has just enough experience to be able to move us through a regular day. People have made it clear that they don't think that the job is that difficult, and that if it's just a matter of coordinating, I think he'd be great at that. I haven't talked to him or anything, but that's my recommendation. I'm sure we could do other recommendations as well. I think our charter calls that city council, in absence of a city manager, beyond down the chain, city council can manage those responsibilities. This is Lori. I'm so sorry you're getting the brunt of me today. It's not personal, but again, it just seems, right, if the appearance is something was set in place and here we are.
Sorry, I was not on mute. Well, we do have a motion on the floor. Does anyone want to amend that motion to instead appoint Nick Stepnitz as the city manager, or interim city manager? Because I'm not sure who made the motion. I forgot. I'm sorry.
I think Lou did.
Oh, Lou did.
Yeah. Sampson, then Phillips.
All right.
Mayor, would it be appropriate for me to speak now, or would that be out of turn on where you're at?
Absolutely. Go ahead and speak.
All right. I mean, I did submit a letter. There was no plan in place. I can say that over the last, couple months, I've worked closely with Lori on a lot of stuff. She's been working really hard on doing finance. She's been working with Kathy, helping Kathy out in the role. And we're talking about doing some policy and procedure updates and the employee handbook, which is out of date. And she has some experience with that. I mean, those are some tasks that we've been talking about that we could move forward. Kathy was originally obviously on that track to start looking into and pulling some of those procedures forward. So again, only my recommendation, obviously based on the internal people that we have here now. And that is why I made that recommendation based on what we've been going and how much she's been covering over the last couple months outside of just the finance stuff and working with Kathy on different projects as well. So I just wanted to throw that 2 cents out there. There was nothing, no one put me in place or asked me to do that on their behalf as far as like the decision was made. So I just want council and the mayor to be aware of that.
I wasn't implying that, actually.
Okay. I just wanted to make
just so you know. Yeah, I was not implying that.
Okay.
Anyways, but the things you just described, it doesn't sound like she'll have time to do those things, taking on finance only and in not a full-time capacity. So that's a consideration.
I think what he said was she's already doing a lot of that stuff. She's been behind the scenes holding things together.
Well, and I think that's Councilmember Milan's concern, is that if she's already doing those things, then that implies that she's already taken over the role, which is inappropriate. And that's what she was pointing out when the resignation from Mr. Cook was forwarded to her, when it doesn't go to the finance director, and it only makes sense to go to Catherine. And so, a lot of times we're in the position where we have to try and piece together information to figure out what's really going on. And I think Councilmember Milan is just pointing out that suggests that, I mean, you just said it, she's already doing it. it's not appropriate for her to already take over those tasks and to oversee, whatever projects that is going to be for the city manager, because she hasn't been appointed. And the concern is that she was given the illusion, and things like forwarding that email to her would be appropriate for a city manager, but not for a finance director, suggests that, just what you said, she was already doing that, and that's a concern.
Okay, well, maybe I misspoke the way they said. She's not already acting as city manager. She's the one, though, that has stepped in and helped in all the different departments, just because that's the type of person she is. Matt Cook's letter aside, I don't know anything about that, what happened there. That's just a minuscule thing at this point. When I say that she's already doing this type of stuff, it's because since Erin left, she has been picking up the game and helping out with Michelle, with Kathy, with everybody. That's just the type of person she is. She has never been given any authority by any of us to act as city manager. Now that the Matt Cook letter, I don't know. I'm just taking that off the table right now. But all I'm saying is she has shown to me that she knows what's going on. And for many, 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 many years, we had a financial director and city manager all in one, and that worked fine for us.
Well, let's ask the finance director if it did work fine, because, and this is not throwing anyone under the bus on that either, but people do things differently. And when people are no longer in charge of things, other people find flaws with those things. So I personally do not want to see that happen again. I don't want our finance director to be our city manager. It is, first of all, it takes away one level of judgment, right? Of checks and balances that is really integral to an organization, especially an organization this small. And I know we had that in the past, and people diligently, they did their best. I think people always work to their best and they work to their strengths, but people have strengths. If your strength is finance, it's probably not also city manager styles, expectations. You can't do both, right? You can't do both all the time. What I want to see for Clausen is for us to put people in position who are playing to their strengths and will serve the citizens well. I do not want to cut costs. I don't want to cut corners. We have to deal with budgets, but I don't think that's wise to do that again.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I would just like to thank Lori for being such a team player. I've seen her step into a lot of jobs. I think she's going to be a great asset as the interim city manager. And she's done a great job. So just we gotta quit beating her down here and just get to the vote.
No one's beating Lori down. We're just asking for clarity. And Kathy, your additional explanation gives me pause, because we had a full-time city manager in place and an assistant city manager in place. Mm-hmm. And yet you said that she had to step in and already take over some of these tasks. So we need 3 people in the role?
I didn't say she was taking them over. I said she helped with them.
So we had a full-time city manager and a part-time city manager, and she had to help with those tasks. I mean, a 1.5 employees couldn't take it over. We're getting down to, we're at the end of the day, the concern is that before a vote went to place, she is already, and it's been acknowledged several times, not only through the email, which we had tangible evidence, but some other comments that were made. She's already been functioning in this role, and that just gives some of us concern. That's all.
So let me just, does anybody else have anything, sorry, to add to that? Lou? Kathy?
Just again, I'd like to thank Lori for doing such a great job. And we put a lot of pressure on her, and she's doing a great job.
Kathy?
I was just going to say, I mean, I could totally go with Sue and Paula on this if we were looking to put her in permanently. We're looking for an interim while we're doing a city manager search.
Well, yeah.
Go ahead, Paula, you're
You're on mute.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing, but I said, pardon my caution, because we haven't approved the city manager search yet, right? I understand it's on the agenda, but nothing's done till it's done. And I guess I'm not even a skeptical person, but I feel like I have to be skeptical when I pick up papers and look at what's going on around here. And I don't like that feeling. I don't want to feel like that I have to, pay attention so that someone's not like 2 steps ahead with something that is maybe not in all of our best interest. And that could be my problem, that all of a sudden I am that skeptical. But when I see things, there's just signs of things that if it were the other way around, you would have pause, right? And I'm just asking questions because I want clarity. I'm not throwing accusations because I just wouldn't do that. But Reese, if you say you sent it to Lori because it had zoning board of appeals, okay. But I would say to you, you're very good at what you do and you're very detail oriented. I guess if I had seen Catherine's email on there as well, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. To me, first glance, I'm like, no, that doesn't make sense. That makes sense adding in with the recommendation to give Lori this position on an interim basis.
just out of curiosity, do you have that email in front of you? What was the time on that?
I do. It says resignation from Planning Commission and Board of Appeals, 1 message. Our scripture at City of Clawson, only to you. 2,
Time and
Lori
date,
Pardon me?
I was asking for the time and date.
Oh, time and date, April 30th, 1:12.
So April 30th was what day?
April 30th was Thursday.
All right, and at 1:12. So as I said, it was on the agenda already, or well, it was supposed to be on the agenda about appointing Ed Sinaki. And then the planning commission meeting hit and it was still on there and I went, wait a minute, wait, Matt Cook's letter was June 1st and I need Ed sooner. I called Rennis and said, Rennis, do I need another letter from Matt or can we just go ahead and appoint Ed, but I have a letter, and Rennis said it would really help if you could get that letter. And I said, okay, great. And Lori at that time was helping with the agenda, and I knew that because Catherine had made a call and said, if you have any other agenda items, they need them by this time. And she had said she wouldn't be available. And I said, I got it. Okay, Lori, Rennis said that you need a letter. Let me get a hold of Matt right away. I contacted Matt Cook about 20 minutes before that. I said, Matt, could you change the date on that so we can do this properly? And he said, sure. And he sent it to me. And I said, great. And I flipped it to Lori and I copied Rennis so he knew that I had done what I asked him that I need to do. So he was informed. And Lori and Catherine were working on the agenda. And that's how that happened. And if I failed to copy Catherine in, I was working in a hurry because actually at 1 o'clock in that time, I'm normally working my job, which I was, and I was trying to take care of something very quickly so it could be properly on the agenda because that came up last minute with the Planning Commission and the realization that that might be an issue. So I apologize if that appeared to be a conspiracy and suspicious to you, but in fact, it was simply a very quick attempt to take care of something to make sure that we had the proper dates on there and we could get what we needed in place so we had someone for that liaison because of the LEC project that needs to go. So I apologize, Catherine, if I failed to include you on that. I apologize for whatever that looked like, but that's really that simple. It was something I tried to do in a very quick fashion to get it done because the mayor is the one that's supposed to appoint, and so the mayor was the one making sure that that was properly on the agenda. That's simple.
Okay.
So not to be the dead horse, but is it the finance director's responsibility to help with the agenda? Or is that a city manager role? Because
Kathy's
it's
not available and neither was Mr. Chief Sarvallo. He was in the middle of working on getting all of the stuff ready and that's how it was going down. It's just that simple. I mean, it's a pandemic. Okay, things don't always work exactly the way they're supposed to. But you know what? That's it. So it was just getting it done. Kathy Leanhouse was out of the office taking care of her sister-in-law. Chief Sarvello was busy getting the buildings ready, and they asked Lori to help Catherine get that all squared away on the agenda. It's that simple. Anybody else have anything else to add? Are you reaching up to hit or, okay. If not, then we can go ahead and call the vote, and if it gets voted down, then we can take the next step. So let's go ahead and call the vote then. Kat?
Oh,
There you go.
Councilmember Phillips,
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Scripture,
Yes.
Councilmember Milan,
No.
Councilmember Moffett.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I keep flipping my thing off. All right, in that case, we have appointed Lori Fisher as the interim city manager.
Welcome aboard, Lori.
And we are authorizing the city attorney to negotiate the agreement amongst parties, right? That was part of the motion that was read.
Yes, yes.
All right, just want to make sure. All right, now, next on the agenda is consideration to approve Amy Sell to conduct a city manager search.
Madam Mayor, I had a motion that we approve Amy Sell to conduct a city manager search with a not to exceed $2,000 limit.
I know she said that before we get a second, and that's fine. And I know that she said that. I don't know if we can, what she said specifically was to, that
No,
it would be for travel. I mean, it's reimbursing for costs. And if we're going to say that we're not going to exceed $2,000, then part of that, because that's her staff and travel and stuff like that. I mean, that's fine, we can do that, and I know that's what she said, and I know that's the intent, but I mean, what if it's 2020? I guess is what I'm asking.
It only takes a quick motion and we could fix that. She said,
Okay.
she said 2,000 and I asked not to exceed and she said, yep, 2,000. So that's where she wanted it.
It is your motion, and I'm gonna let you make it. Just wanted to double check in there and kind of, and then I guess I need a second. And I'm not getting a second.
I think you're not getting a second out of me because she did say 2,000, Lou. But she also added that there would be additional costs that we may have to pay for prospective employees to transportation and stuff. So I don't know if we can put.
That's considered bid creep. She could keep adding things up to $10,000 and I don't want that to happen.
Well, but no, what Kathy's saying, and I'm just trying to be accurate, Lou, is that it was $2,000, or well, she said that number, that was her, to cover her staff's costs, that was also for traveling, her staff, not the prospective things.
Yeah.
Her staff's cost and the costs of posting the advertising and the marketing for, or, to post those jobs.
Yeah.
So as long as you're not trying to say that would include any of these candidates travel.
All the other costs we were going to have to, if we wanted to see him or have him or her come to us, then that's our problem. But it
Okay.
just.
I just want to make sure, because that's what I wasn't clear
Yeah,
on.
it's a thing of her staff and her travel and all that. If we want a candidate to come, then we have to pay for it, and then we talk about that, and that's what we talked about during that thing is. Just as long as we keep the costs in line, that's all right.
Well, can you reword, I mean, I don't know if I can suggest this, but
Suggestion.
reword it to say her costs.
Okay, I'll add that. Her company's cost not to exceed $2,000.
Then I'll
Her
support
company's-
that.
Okay.
Well,
I'm okay with
It's the
that.
same thing. You're saying the same thing.
Well,
I know.
and we control how those costs get racked up by asking her to come or not come, or asking for additional posting. So it's unfair to put that limit on and then ask her to perform functions. If we want to keep the costs down, it's incumbent upon us to not ask her to travel and not ask her to do things. I mean, that's the way for us to control those costs, but you're putting her in a position where we're going to ask her to do things, and in order to meet her customers' demands, she's going to exceed those costs, and that's not fair to put anyone in. So, you know,
I didn't dream of $2,000. She said it. All I'm saying is,
Yeah.
if you're bringing, if you're going to bring a candidate in, I understand that we have to add to that, and we can always add to that anytime we want. All it takes is a motion, but I just want to make sure that it's, her cost for her and her staff is going to stay at 2,000, under 2,000.
Then we
Those
can't-
items are, sorry.
I was gonna say that we can't ask her to come out in any manner such that it would cause her to exceed that 2,000. So we control how that cost racks up by the demands we put on her. So you're putting a vendor in a position where you're limiting the amount that we can spend, but also, we're also in control of, we can control that by how much we ask her to travel, how much we ask her to post, those kinds of things.
She already offered the services.
A ballpark. As a ballpark.
No, it was let's hold this off, and let's go look at the minutes, because I asked exactly not to exceed, and she said that she wouldn't, and she said
He
it.
specifically did say that.
I
He
did.
did, but if we say $2,000, then it makes us look ridiculous when we have to come back and say, oh, we're paying $365 for a posting. We're paying another $185 for another posting. All of these things will be written up in the contract, which we have to approve. So it's kind of moot. Like, we really don't have to say $2,000 because it's not really reflective of $2,000. We're going to be incurring more than $2,000 in this process, and it'd be wrong to say that's what it is off the bat, because it's not that. She's keeping the bulk of the cost to that, but there are other costs associated with it that we are going to be responsible for.
And then she can just explain it to us, and we can vote on it. It's okay. If you look at her last statement, she said how it wasn't had to be done by April. She said she would do it 5 years from now, and she said not to exceed the 2,000. So let's just keep it at the 2,000 for her staff and her staff. And if we want to add to it, that's just a change order, and we just give her a change order for whatever we ask for, not for what she thinks we needed. So we keep control of this one, and Lori will be the one that can make sure that we stick to the 2,000, or if we have to vote for more. But this is the first time we can start watching our money.
Well, we shouldn't have to vote for small things like, $350 to post something. And we give the impression that this whole process is only going to be $2,000 when it's going to be probably $3,500 or $4,000 or whatever, depending on what we do. We control all of those things, Lou. All I'm asking is, I know what you're doing, and I know why you're saying it, because you want to hold her to the $2,000. I get that. She's going to hold to the $2,000. It's going to be in her contract that that's what she's going to do. But for transparency purposes, it is wrong for us to sit here now and say we're engaging Amy Sell to a not to exceed $2,000, because it's not a not to exceed $2,000. And why make the process longer? Why have to address this yet again for $360 or for another $185? Let's just do it the convenient way and say, let's engage Amy Sell.
It could be a couple $3,000 trip, or two people a $3,000 trip. So it's really, she's the one that brought the 2,000 up. I didn't. But she said that it was not to exceed that, because I asked that not to exceed, and she said, "Yep."
Right, and you are 100% right. She did say that, and she'll hold to it. But there's no reason for us to say it right now.
No deals. You can ask our attorney. No deals. It's as good as the paper it's written on. If we don't have it written on a paper that says not to exceed 2,000, it can creep to 5 easy.
It's gonna be in her contract, so it is gonna be a meeting.
Well, then you should have a problem voting for 2,000 then, because if we're
You're-
arguing over this.
I'm not arguing, I'm just saying you're painting an incorrect picture if you say $2,000, because it's not $2,000. Everybody here knows it's not $2,000. So you want to say it's $2,000 and say, we told her $2,000, and then we're going to come back and say, we had to add this, we had to add this, we had to add this. What's the point of that, other than just to make yourself say $2,000?
Then she should have said
We
it
can
was going to
just
cost
vote on your
more.
motion.
That'll work.
Did anything else before we, Kathy, anything?
I can't hear.
Okay.
Okay, what did you say?
I said, I was asking Kathy Phillips if she had anything, Council Member Sampson, and I was asking Councilmember Moffitt if she had anything to add, or Councilmember Milan if she had anything to add.
I'm good right now.
All right. So the motion, as I understand it, is, shoot, I just lost the page. Okay. Is approving the city, authorize Amy Sell to conduct the city manager search without, and I'm still not good with her cost, because it would be cost of her organization's travel and posting the job. But for the sake of, you made the motion, 2,000, not to exceed $2,000. But it just says conduct the city manager search not to exceed $2,000. So we have a second, and if you could roll call that.
Did we have a second? If so, who was it?
I thought Kathy did.
Did you, Kathy?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. So,
Could you read that again, please? Motion.
so the motion that I had, but well, basically it was I moved to approve the city authorize Amy Sell to conduct the city manager search not to exceed a $2,000 limit.
See, that's not right.
Well,
Tell you what,
that's
why don't we-
Councilmember,
But it's not
Yeah.
correct.
yeah, Councilmember Lott, that is the motion. I think that needs to have a vote, and then if it votes down, then perhaps you need to modify it through a new motion.
Yeah, I get that.
Go ahead and call the vote.
So we're going, okay. Councilmember Phillips,
No.
Councilmember Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Scripture.
I'm gonna vote no, because I think we need more clarity on that motion. That's all.
Councilmember Milan,
No, for the same reason.
Councilmember Moffitt.
No.
It's not passed.
Okay,
So
I'd like
I-
to make a motion that we approve Amy Sell to conduct the city manager search.
Second.
Period.
Okay.
All right.
All right, who seconded it? I didn't get
I
that.
did.
Who's it? Me?
Susan.
Susan, thank you.
Can I ask a question on process? So maybe we can address the situations. I don't think anybody is disagreeing that she made a commitment to a certain price level, but I don't think anybody's disagreeing with that. Can I make a suggestion? Because I think it was either you, Councilmember Milan, or Councilmember Moffitt that said, the next step would be, even though we're obviously taking advantage of her guarantee, we would still, there were some things that we also talked about, more upfront stuff with application, stuff we talked about in the workshop. So I would think we would do some sort of an addendum to her original contract, Mr. Nushai, something that just outlines those. Would that be proper?
I mean, obviously, we're free to reach out and attempt to do that. The
That would
contractual
protect
agreement.
her too, and I mean, it protects both parties, right?
The contractual agreement as it stands is sufficient enough, considering what I think transpired, even though I agree with Councilmember Moffitt, with Councilmember Sampson, that obviously everything is, we need to focus on what's in writing as opposed to what was uttered. Nonetheless, we did ask Councilmember Moffitt last time at the workshop, ask specific questions with respect to the limitations on that Amy Sell had as far as fees and incurred costs and so on and so forth. And, she asked those questions several times in a couple of, very important nuanced ways that I thought worked very well as far as what we need in order to ensure that those costs stay within reason. So,
Although
with
I
that-
have to agree, she did actually say, I kind of was surprised when she said not to exceed. She did agree. But I also agree that the way the question was asked from different angles, I took the intent to be, it would be absolute best effort, and meaning best effort, expecting us to keep our requests at a reasonable level. So we all did that to keep it at that cost, to be fair both to her and to us in that range. That's the way I interpreted that conversation. And that $2,000 was the number that she said she anticipated would cover hosting the ad, the marketing, and any travel costs for her staff.
I think that's a fair interpretation. I think pretty much all of council had the same interpretation. So I think, to answer your question, it costs us nothing to be able to reach out to her and to try to add an addendum or add an additional understanding with respect to this particular portion. Obviously, again, the contract stands on
May I ask for a
itself.
compromise then, Lou? Councilmember Sampson, are you there? May I ask for a compromise?
Sure.
I absolutely understand your point. I think we all do agree on the intent and the, nobody wants this to go too high. We all keep our behavior in check so the costs stay down. I think we all agree. Could the compromise be that we simply have an addendum to that, where that is spelled out a little bit more clearly in the addendum to what we all thought we agreed, to specifically state those two things, what those costs, and that we are responsible for all travel of actual candidates, that type of thing, and just have that clarified in the contract. If when that contract comes to us, you are still concerned, clearly we can have this discussion again, but perhaps if that comes to us with keeping in mind everything we've just said, and obviously this is a quick addendum, it's nothing big, there isn't anything major we're changing. Could we do that? Would that be a compromise, Councilman?
Oh, I'll agree to that as long as I know our attorney's going to, write an addendum to it and protect Clausen, not protect Amy Sells. It seems like we got a commercial going here again.
That would come back to us, right?
Yeah,
That would come back to us. Would
absolutely.
Councilmember Milan, Councilmember Moffitt, do you have any objection to that? Would that be a fair we could.
I would have assumed she would give us a contract anyways, a revised.
That's what I thought. And
even thinking by any stretch that she wouldn't operate without a revised contract. So
Okay.
all of those things, including the fact that we're going to stick to $2,000, but I wasn't trying to be uncooperative about the $2,000. I know that's what she said, and I trust that she will honor that. I just feel we are disingenuous if we pretend that that's the whole fee. It's not the whole fee. It's going to cost the citizens more money than that. We should be upfront about that from the beginning. That's all. So
I understand.
Well, I thought we were pretty upfront with her that it was not to exceed. So, we don't need another Amy Sell commercial. So let's call a vote.
yeah, nobody's commercialing her, Lou, but maybe just a little bit of confidence would be good. That's all.
So if I could,
Hope you get the
please,
job.
If I could, please. Mr. Nushai, you raised your hand. Did you have something to add?
No, I just wanted to say, obviously, because she's exercising the portion of the agreement, or we are exercising the portion of the agreement, the original agreement that talks about that she was not going to, the city was not going to incur an additional fee. So in and of itself, no additional document would be required. She would not need to, nor would we necessarily need an additional document. However, to the extent that it will, it makes sense for this council, I will absolutely do so. And I anticipate no issues from her. Obviously, it costs us nothing to do so, but I anticipate no issues from her. She seemed to be very willing. So I don't think, I think so far as this council is concerned, we should be just fine as far as that agreement is concerned.
And that's, Lou, are you comfortable with that?
Oh yeah, I trust Rennis.
Ms. Christian, could you read back the motion, please?
Yeah, and so I was going to ask the motion if we were going back to the original one, which,
No,
No.
Councilmember Milan made a new motion and Councilmember Moffitt seconded it.
right. And so the new motion I don't have, because it was-
Councilmember Moffitt,
so
could you be so kind as to restate your motion?
Councilmember Milan made the motion.
I made the motion. I I said I would like to approve
think-
entry into an agreement with Amy Sell for a city manager search. And I was sure that there's a new contract agreement that states out all conditions for both parties. How about that?
I did start to write down what you said, and you said, move to approve the city to authorize Amy Sell to conduct the city manager search. I think that as it is written, we all agree on, and then.
So that's what I said the first time, right? So
And I asked for the compromise, could we direct, there be an addendum to the contract that clarifies those costs to Mr. Newshy, between Mr. Newshy and Amy Sell, to ensure that Councilmember Sampson and, we see it. And nobody gets confused, or we don't have this argument again, or conversation, or whatever we're having. But that's what I thought he agreed to, and so could we add that, which you actually said in the first place, and I think in the first motion, somebody did, or added something.
just write down whatever she wants. I don't even care. Put my name on it. I don't care. I don't know how to repeat it again.
I don't either, actually. All I know is the first part you got, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Paul, are you reverting to what's written in the wording for the council?
That's how I started before, right? That is how I started. And then I thought,
No, I was talking to Miss Christian. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was asking her if that's what she has, the first part, and then.
I have the first part, which was the original motion on the agenda. And
And if I may, there
still
was a second.
confused as to what is being
And
added.
if I may, there was a second to that original motion that Councilmember Milan did. The second was from Councilmember Moffitt. There was no amendment to it. I, however, have heard council loud and clear, and I will take care of my duties and I will discharge them faithfully as I've heard this council state. So there's now just a need for an additional, for the vote on the motion from Councilmember Milan.
So the motion is that we approve the city authorize Amy Sell to conduct the city manager search. Please roll call.
Okay. Okay. Councilmember Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Scripture,
Yes.
Councilmember Milan,
yes.
Councilmember Moffitt,
Yes.
Councilmember Phillips.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, we have approved the city authorize Amy Sell to conduct the city search, and our city attorney will do his magical whatever to make sure that we are clear on all that. But I think we are. I think we know. All right, now where am I? Next on the agenda is consideration to approve the manager evaluation tool, and I just need a motion and a second so we can open it.
Madam Mayor, I move that we use the manager evaluation tool as presented.
Could I get a second? All right, the motion fails with no second. So do I have a different motion from anybody?
Wait, Reese,
I'm
sorry,
sorry.
I thought I had my mic on. I asked a question, is that 360 manager evaluation tool?
No, I'm pretty sure they recommended against a 360.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, okay.
No, I didn't think that, I thought they recommended against a 360, and I didn't think 360 was in.
Right, that's, I just wanted to make sure because it didn't say anything there, so. I'll support Lou's thing then.
All right, then in that case, with a motion and a support, we can open discussion. And I'm gonna, whoever
So-
wants to go first.
I'll go first. I don't like the idea of pigeonholing ourselves into one methodology for evaluating anyone. if we're going to do an evaluation tool, it should be part of our HR policies. It should be the same evaluation process that's used for all members of staff. And I think that there's a lot of investigation and training that needs to go into that. And I read over the tool and all the study from the university and that kind of stuff. And I feel like it's a longer process needs to happen to come up with a comprehensive evaluation process across the organization. And one of the things that needs to be incorporated into any evaluation process is the ability to be flexible and address what's at hand. And I also don't like any kind of rating system. You know, pick 1, 2, 3, 4, people tend to, you know, fall to the middle. I prefer more of a, you know, an anecdotal conversation kind of thing. But I think that we, as part of reviewing all of our HR processes, that we take a look at it holistically and not just implement one thing for one position.
I agree with that. Oh, sorry.
Nope, I was just asking anybody else. You're fine.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too. I think I find that they work better. It's a better tool if you're directing it towards the position, towards the responsibilities of a person, or a task, I should say, a role, and then that you look at it at the overall with the organization. And I think that's something that we need to have a lot of conversation about, to figure out those things, which is probably a good thing anyway, so we can establish the roles and responsibilities of this person, potential person, and then also to use throughout the city. There's no one tried and true that works for everybody, that every single person is gonna like. I agree with Sue. I think a mixture sometimes of a numerical and an actual verbal answer is good, because it pulls different things out. Certain people are more number based, and then other people are more verbal and can identify skills. And I think you just need a balance. You need to look at a whole system that has a good balance, and then you need to evaluate it a little bit loosely, right? I don't like any rigid form or evaluation, because I don't think people aren't generally rigid. You have to have room for interpretation. You have to have room for a little bit of grace with people's strengths and failures. And I'd like to see if this is something we really want to do, that we set up a workshop and look at this with the eyes of 5 set of eyes of things that we each think are important. And we can, of course, use some of these tools that have been identified and then tweak them to fit our institution. We don't have to start from scratch.
Ms. Phillips, did you have anything? Councilmember Sampson, did you have anything?
No.
So I am not against a workshop. That's perfectly fine. I do have a question though, and especially if we do have a workshop, I would presume that you could bring examples of what you have, the tools and that you've used in the past with the past couple city managers. I would presume you'd have those tools and methods that you could share and bring those to the meetings.
What did you just ask for? Tools of the previous city managers?
Whatever method was used for previous past evaluations, I would assume you would have samples of those tools and methods that you use that you could bring to the sessions.
Well, I'm pretty sure that we had a conversation not too long ago where someone stated that we didn't in fact have those things, which we—
I don't think we did, but perhaps I'm wrong.
There were some standards,
but indicated we had one.
It's perhaps not wise to use anything that was used in the past. What I was just suggesting is that we set something up that we could use as a council.
What we could do is, because we did do a very comprehensive evaluation process. Paula, you and I were involved in one. Kathy, we've heard about you being on council before, so I assume that all the years that you were on council, you did evaluations, and you can speak to how you evaluated the managers. So we can talk about the process that we went through. It was a very collaborative process with everyone on council having the opportunity to weigh in and submit their opinions and thoughts. And then a very comprehensive document, which is confidential because it was written specifically for a person, but we certainly can talk about the process that we went to and the goals that we had. And I'm sure Councilmember Phillips has some things she can bring to the table as well about what was done during her tenure.
Why don't one of you volunteer, because both of you are HR experts, why don't you volunteer to lead the next workshop and bring examples and, because the two of you can get together and tell us what's the best.
Well, I don't think I'm not an expert at anything. I'll just state that right from the beginning. And although I appreciate your confidence, and I'm sure you meant it genuinely, I would maybe defer to you. You apparently are a military man. I can't there's any policy that would be more rigid and more defined than being in the military for an entire life of service like you've led. But let's get away from you and me for a moment. And
No,
let's
I'll volunteer. I'll take it on.
No, I don't need to. Thank you. I would say that we meet with Mr. Sarvello, Chief Sarvello as well, because I know that they have great processes in the police department. This is not a haphazard thing for them. What I'm saying is, in my experience, and I am not an expert, I have experience, that's it. In my experience of bringing a team together, putting together, evaluating what people's criteria are, what they feel is important, especially in a position such as this, where there are 5 employers, not 1, right? Like, I'm not responsible for the city manager myself, nor is anyone else here. If we have different sets of eyes and we come across things with different levels, we will build a very good evaluation tool, because things that are important to me are probably not important to Lou, and things that are important to Lou are probably not important to me, but they may be very important for our city manager. So I'm asking for that. I don't need to lead it. If you want me to lead it, I can lead it. I can bring you examples all day, all night. Lou, you could find examples if you went online. If you had any energy to do that, that's fine too. But don't pick on me, because I'm trying to put some very effective
If I may,
information out there that we can do this as a team. No, I wasn't picking on you. You said I'll do the U.S. Navy's got the best evaluation system I've ever seen, so I don't have any problem bringing that one up.
so if I may, because we have a motion on the thing, and we also had a suggestion for a workshop. I haven't had the chance to say what I feel about this, but I will say 2 things. I will say thing number 1 is I adamantly disagree. Anything that's not objective and consistent, I do not believe is objective system. And number 2, whatever tools were used in the past, they should be tools, and therefore confidential information, you would have a blank form, and then you'd have the form that's confidential that you wouldn't make part of whatever, but there should be the tool without the information in it. And if there were tools that were used in the past, from Kathy's time all the way forward, it would be nice to see some of those. But I would say that why don't we call for the vote, because we do have, unless someone wants to amend it to say that they would like to set a workshop as an alternative, one or the other. We're either going to call for the vote and vote it up or down, or we are going to amend for a workshop. And Lou, you made the vote, so why don't we go, Ms. Christian, why don't you just call the vote?
Okay. Mayor Scripture.
Yes.
Councilmember Milan. Councilmember Milan.
Would you please read the motion?
It was, I move to approve the manager evaluation tool as presented.
No.
Councilmember Moffett.
No.
Councilmember Phillips.
No.
Councilmember Sampson.
Yes.
Okay, that's 3 no's.
All right, the motion fails because we had the suggestion to have a workshop. I would entertain.
I'll make a motion. We have a workshop. What would be a good date, Madam Mayor? Because you got the whole list of workshops.
Well, we're gonna have to add workshops. We can't just go on the dates we have.
No.
And I actually don't have my calendar open. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I'll just make a motion. We add another workshop for it.
Put a time frame on it. Put within
within the next 2 months.
Okay.
8 weeks, 8 weeks.
I think it needs to be sooner than 8 weeks.
Well, tomorrow would be good for me. I mean, pick what's good for you guys. I'll make it 4 weeks. Let's do 4 weeks.
Only because we have budget stuff that is a priority, so that would get us past that, and that would be reasonable to me. So we are asking, you made a motion to have a
Yep.
workshop to.
Within 4 weeks to
Within 4 weeks to
develop.
develop a manager evaluation tool. And I need a second.
Second.
Any more discussion on that, or can I call the vote on that?
I think that it would be more prudent because we have budget workshops and we have the whole, all the activities in the timeline around selecting a new city manager. I think it would be more prudent to spend our energies on budget and the selection process, because an evaluation is not going to take place until, you know, it's going to, if we're going to do it organization-wide, then we should have the buy-in from who the new city manager is. If we're going to do it, if we're going to put an evaluation process in citywide, which is the most prudent thing to do.
I didn't ever. We didn't vote on that. We didn't put that out there. That was not even that. No, where did that? I know you said it.
Because one of my original comments was that I don't think it's prudent to make an evaluation process for one role in the organization. What I said was that if we're going to do an evaluation process, it should be part of our overall HR duties, because everyone in the organization deserves an evaluation. I'm talking, I get to finish what I'm saying. So that having a proper evaluation process is one of the HR policies that need to be addressed citywide. And so that we should wait for the buy-in for whoever the permanent city manager is. And so I believe the workshop should not take place until we take care of all of those other things and have someone in place. So it should be done, say, beginning of third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter.
I would like to add that it's going to be really difficult to establish this process without having first defined one's roles and responsibilities.
Which, given the
I'm so
timeline
confused
we
right
already
now.
done. Huh?
I said, I am so confused right now. Are we asking to set up a tool to use to interview a new city manager?
No,
Or,
not there yet.
okay.
Kathy. No.
pardon me?
We're talking about, there was a presentation, there was a memo attached to this, it's in the packet, that we are talking about a manager evaluation tool. This is not about the
The interview tool.
manager search. It's not about the search tool.
Okay. That changes my opinion all the way around.
Could we bring them people in that wrote it and have them lead the discussion?
We could not, because they were students and we have a COVID pandemic and schools are shut down.
No, do it on one of these.
They're not in class anymore, Lou.
Okay.
Yeah, schools are out, colleges are out now.
I mean, otherwise that probably would have been something, you're absolutely right, but the situation's changed through no fault of anybody. So
Okay.
what was your, I'm sorry, Kathy, I don't understand what changed. What?
I thought there was just going back so many times, and I apologize. I have such a headache from trying to hear all this. I was thinking that you were talking about doing a manager training interview tool, and I was like, I was just not on the same page. Sorry. For those of you that are sitting there, it's like I have a hearing loss right now, and it's very hard for me to hear all of you at the same time. So if I ask questions, I apologize. I'm missing a lot of this, so I'm on board now. I got it. It's in my head now.
So I think this is very important that we address this. I think our timing is just a little bit off. I think we should get through our budget process and then we can address this, but we can't do it without knowing what we're going to be expecting from the person in this position. So I think we just need to take a step back for a minute and get to the identification of roles and responsibilities, and then we can do this. We can't do it without that. We'll have established a tool that will not meet our needs if we just decide to set up some sort of a rubric that says we expect this, this, and this. You can't expect things when you have yet to define what's expected.
Anybody else? So I, again, strongly disagree, and I think I explained that in the memo that was attached. I, for one, would not apply for a position if I did not have an idea of how that position was going to be evaluated. I want to know that that type of organizational excellence is in place. That's the first point. The second point is that we, as council, have absolutely nothing to do with whatever this new city manager decides to put in place for evaluations for staff and everything. That is under the purview of the city manager in that person's jurisdiction of staff. And that, so it is not an organizational wide thing. We do not manage staff. We do not evaluate staff. We evaluate a city manager. So I adamantly disagree that the two tools should somehow be the same. That is, I'm allowed to have that opinion, and I have it, and I am stating it. So I do not feel we should be waiting until, because we also have a lot of items that we need to take care of, but we also have a habit of never getting to things that need to be done. And I would much rather see this. I'm applying for this job. I want to see a tool. I want to know how I'm going to be evaluated up front, not 6 months into the job, not through when we get around to figuring it out. I want to know. And that is my opinion, and that's why I believe this is something we should do sooner rather than later. I am fine with the workshop I believe the motion was 4 weeks. I'm fine with the workshop, but I believe that needs to be part of the process of preparing for the next city manager and not waiting until that happens. So the motion on the table is to set a workshop in the next 4 weeks to discuss, I'm trying to talk loud, Kathy, so I can hope you can hear me, to discuss and review a manager evaluation tool. Could I get a roll call, please?
Yes, Councilmember Milan.
No, and for clarification, City Council also supervises the city clerk and the finance director and the chief of police. So it would be not perhaps, I don't know what word it was used, citywide, but it would have other applications, just for the record.
Okay. So your vote was no, Councilmember Milan. Okay. Councilmember Moffitt.
No.
Councilmember Phillips.
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson.
Yes.
Mayor Scripture.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passed.
We will check calendars and we will select a date, because we have agreed to start working on a manager evaluation tool in a workshop session within the next 4 weeks. All right, then next on the agenda, Kathy, now we're at what you were, and I understand how that could actually get confusing just without even hearing 2 things in a row. So the next on the agenda is consideration to approve the manager's search timeline, membership, and meeting dates for Amy Sellen. I believe those are all included in the packet. So if I could get a motion for that, please. Before we get that motion, I'm not sure this motion's gonna work the way it's written.
So I'll make the motion that I move to approve the timeline and the future selection of meeting dates as presented for the city manager search. And then if someone seconds it, then we can amend it afterwards.
I'll second it.
And so I know your hesitation was because we had suggested, based on the workshops, Councilmember Milan had suggested that we fold in some community members into the search process and the timeline. And the reason I also amended what was written here is because the timeline has weeks, not specific dates. So it identifies weeks, not the day of the week for that. So, so if we want to have the discussion about who we're going to fold in, then I can amend my motion once we have that discussion.
Yes, you were correct. I was like, we kind of have to give you names before you could make a motion with names. So yes, that is exactly what I was looking at. So we can open up for discussion, and I have two questions. Would you, so my first question is, in order to get this right, in looking at the last meeting and the way when you had said about names in a community thing, and it was input on the rubric, correct? Which I don't believe is also on here. Wasn't that specifically what that was for?
We hadn't identified exactly what the process was. I think that.
Yeah, but was it for the rubric? Because that's and I thought that was very specifically what was part of it, right? Was the feedback for the rubric, and you had suggested bringing community, but I don't see rubric on here. That's why I'm asking.
I'm not sure. The Councilmember Milan had asked that we identify members of the community to be involved in the interview process, and we hadn't established, but I would think that we would I guess for matter of conversation, I would think that we identify the members of the community that we want to have part of our process, and they be, of course, non-voting members, but part of the process all the way through, that they partner with through the whole process.
Can I ask, please, could we move this to other business for the simple reason that is absolutely not what I remember, and I thought the minutes didn't reflect that either. I thought it was specific to, I know there was discussion about potentially including the community people in the interview thing later, but I thought this was specifically about, there was a discussion about the rubric and improving it, and I thought Councilmember Milan, and I thought that's what the minutes reflected, had said we could also bring other community members into it, and then the suggestion was to bring, I remember Councilmember Moffitt, you said bring your names to the meeting, but I thought that was specific to the rubric. I would like to go back and check those minutes, and I'm fine if that's not what was meant, but that's what I remember, and I'd like to check the minutes so we can then get it right, if that's right.
We have a motion on the table, and so without amending it, I suggest that we vote on the motion that's on the table, and then we can, under new business or at some other time, we can talk about the community people that we want to fold in, or we can talk about it now and have a discussion about at what point we want to bring the community members in. But I think that if we delay it at all, then that's going to significantly extend.
I don't want to delay it past tonight, just so you understand. I'm not trying to delay it past tonight. I just meant under unfinished business for later on, so we can finish up these other few things and get back to it. I was not
have the conversation right now.
Okay. Well, I would like to know what the minutes said last time, whether it was rubric or interview.
It was a workshop, and we weren't making any finite decisions. It was a workshop. And so we were going to decide here exactly how we were going to approach it, because we can't make decisions in a workshop. So I think we have a discussion.
I might suggest for a rubric might be different than the names I might suggest for an interview. And so those are two very different things. And my recollection is that we talked about developing the rubric to begin the process and the timeline and everything. That's what I recollect that being about.
So is that your proposal for the discussion? Let's talk about that. Let's only bring the community members into the rubric discussion, and then we can discuss other aspects. I mean, what does everyone else think?
I would suggest not bringing people into the rubric portion and bringing them in for the evaluation. That's just to make it that much more concise with the rubric, to make it, look, we have a difficult time with 5 of us coming to a consensus and, picking words, and I'm guilty. But I was thinking, if we don't bring people in for that portion, but we bring them in for the evaluation, or for the interviews with people, and have them part of that process. Be part of both, but if it's simpler to do it just at the later stage, I'm actually fine with either way, I guess.
I'd like to see the citizens because I think it's important that they have input on what we're going to hire. So I think they should be part of the rubric. They should be involved in it.
Well, the rubric's going to just help Amy Sell identify the characteristics that are important and help us draft the posting.
You know,
But
I think it's important for the citizens to have part of what we
well, what I
want.
was going to say was that the real input from the citizens would be in the subsequent steps when we're reviewing the resumes. And if we recall, we're taking a little different approach to this search than we've done in the past, where we're going to review the body of resumes and select it for ones for further action. So we have a lot more steps. And if so, the real identification of the candidates that we're interested in do come in the subsequent steps and not the rubric. So if we're going to, have different steps that we're involving them in, then to get the most impactful input from the citizens, it would be in the later aspect. It might be helpful if Lori can put on the screen again the timeline so we understand all the mile markers that we're looking at, or if someone has that handy, so that we can then identify, if the consensus is that we don't want the citizens involved in the entire process, that we determine at what point we do want them involved.
Well, I want them involved in both parts. I think that'd be the best way to do, because the citizens have good suggestions. So let's do both parts.
So the whole process from beginning to end.
Yeah, I'm all right with that.
You're on mute, Paula.
When it says unmute, it's backwards for me. So the next, not appropriate now, but we have to determine then how are we going to identify these people? Are we going to put a note out that says, if you're interested in assisting in this process, please send us, a brief paragraph or just your name, or do we want to identify them ourselves?
Well, you said come with names, so I have names.
Okay, I have names too. I just wasn't sure.
I just thought it was for one thing, and we're not, so, but either way, and I'm fine with Councilmember Sampson's doing all of it, so if we want to go that way with names, although right now, what is the motion on the table, please? So I can make sure we're not.
We're having the discussion, and if the discussion is that we want people involved in the entire process, then, you said, Mayor Scripture, that changes the people that you would identify. So if that's—
I said it could. It could change.
Okay. Oh, perfect, Lori, thank you.
Oh,
all right.
gosh.
So this was the timeline that we're looking to approve and discuss. So the week of the 17th is the rubric, and then the week of May 25th is the job posting, and then so I think that's the way to approach it. And Councilmember Sampson suggesting that we identify our citizen participants and have them involved in the entire process. And so if we were to do that, I would, I don't know a ton of people in the community who'd be interested in this. And I think that we can vote on the names now, but then we need to go see if these people are actually interested in doing that, unless people who've already confirmed with the people whose names they have in hand. So I guess, Mr. Nishai, if I were to amend it, would it be to invite these people and then see if they're interested in participating?
I would imagine. You can make the amendment however you see fit.
Okay, so I think that would be the appropriate wording to, so after we have the discussion about names, I'll amend it to include the entire process. And then if we want to discuss the names that we want to invite. The only name that I had off the top of my head was, I think her name is Barbara Swope. I know she was involved in the 4th of July committee, and she's very involved in the community. And that was someone that I was going to suggest we invite.
Barbara Swope?
Is that her name? Barbara
Oh,
Swope?
no, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Is it
Yeah.
Bonnie?
Bonnie. I'm terrible with names. Bonnie Swope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm jotting these down so when Catherine can't remember them, I'll,
Do we need to establish a minimum or a number? Or are we going unlimited here?
well, why don't we
Well,
do the names and see if they are sufficient or too much, we can
Okay.
adjust from there.
I would like to recommend Jim McHale. Jim serves on Planning Commission. He's been a member of the school board, I think, for quite a while. And I know in talking to him years ago, he told me how fun it was to have city administrator searches. So I know he's been through a process that would be similar.
Okay. Anybody else? Kathy, did you have any names?
No.
Lou, did you have any names? Whoa, dang it, that hurts my eyes when we do that. Lou, do you have any names?
I think I'm muted. Oh, here we go. There's a lot of people that take their time, and I can see a bunch of names on here right now. How can we get it to them? We may have some great volunteers that want to do it, that actually pay attention to the meetings and stuff. So why don't we, can we give it a day and have them send us an email that they want to participate? So we can bring in people who have actually watched these meetings and heard us
Lou,
discuss this stuff.
Lou, in all fairness, Councilmember Moffett said, please come with your names to the meeting.
I know.
And the motion is on there to give the names. Now, we could potentially, if you want to say, I would like to add some names, whatever, but that she did ask for us to come with names,
Mhm.
and that is the motion. She said, get the names, and then we would do it. Now, we can vote it down, we can do whatever, but let's
Okay.
try and follow with what we have so we can,
I'd be happy to see Greg Kucera, Ed Sanaki. I don't know. Sorry, some of you guys I don't know, but I'd be happy to see anyone who was actually interested in care. You know, and I don't think just because you see their names, there's a lot of people who pay attention that you may not know about. So.
Well, that's my exact point. There's probably people out there that if we said we want help with this, they may be, glad to do it. I mean, so how do we get the message out to the people?
Eva Joyce Burns, I see you. Love to have you on this committee.
all right, so
In
Bonnie
the
Swope.
past,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just trying
Yes,
to.
for all the superintendent searches and stuff like that, what they've done is they've just put a general blank word out saying, if you want to sit in on this and be part of the team or whatever that is hiring this person, then at the school situation, it was let the superintendent know. Then they gave it a week or whatever the time limit was. And then they got together, the school board, and said, okay, this is our list. And they started that as the culling process. So it's just a suggestion.
Lori, can you tell me, I forget, and I know I wrote it, so I apologize, but the timeline, the first week, is that May 17th? Is that the first week we have any activities?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. So what if we were to do this? Because we have a council meeting on the 19th. So we do have another council meeting where we can finalize names. And so, and we can do it by lottery, or we can do it by, going through all the applications, and at the next council meeting, finalize all of, who's going to participate. So what I'm suggesting is that I'm going to amend my motion. I mean, we can have a discussion first before I do this, but if we hold off on names and identify some other process for who's going to be our participant, and Councilmember Milan's correct. We need to say how many we're going to have. And then we can go through an entire different process of how we're going to, because I see coming through chats, people are volunteering and people want to be a part of the process. We can post on Facebook, all that kind of stuff, and then maybe have a lottery or go through the application and identify people at the next council meeting. But we can, so that was rambling, but what I'm proposing is that we stick with the motion of approving the timeline as presented and establishing at the May 19th council meeting, we establish the community participants that will participate in the process. So that's my amended motion. Do you want me to say it again? So I amend my motion to approve the timeline for the city manager search and to accept the weeks that the meetings will take place in as presented, and that at the May 19th city council meeting, after having had solicited names of citizens who want to participate in the process, we will finalize the citizens who will participate in the search process. Did you get all that?
No, but I'll go back.
Okay.
Listen. Sure it's not.
Can I ask, would you consider, Councilmember Moffitt, perhaps breaking this down into two parts? Because I'm concerned. I have some confusion over, first of all, I thought it was about the rubric. If nothing else, I thought that when you and Councilmember Milan had suggested that we add a community process, I had thought that you would be coming prepared with that process. I had my names, which by the way, I get to give my names, everybody else did. But I feel like the second part of this needs a little bit more massaging, and I don't want to not do the first part. Would you consider approving the timeline and meeting dates as presented for the city manager search, period, and then putting in another motion to discuss, or however we want to do the process, or whatever you're proposing? Because
we can discuss that now, and I don't think it's that we didn't come prepared with the process. I think that I didn't anticipate you not understanding the intent of the discussion that we had. And I agree. I am in full support of us identifying these citizens and having them involved from the beginning to the end, partnering with us as we go through this whole process.
Well, I'd like to define that before I ask a citizen to volunteer, because what are you volunteering for? I think that needs to be defined. When are they going to meet? Who's going to be on it? There needs to be definition behind that. We can't just say, please volunteer for a process. We need to define the process, and then either we pick the names or put them in all the things you said, put them in a hat or lot or whatever. But we have to define the process first.
The timeline defines the process. That's why we did a timeline.
Some of that timeline would have nothing to do with the citizens.
No, that's wrong.
No, and that's what we're saying, that we're going to partner with the citizens through that whole timeline process. That all the activities listed on that timeline, the rubric, finalizing the posting, identifying the pool of candidates that we want the recruiter to investigate further, and deciding who we're going to bring in for an interview, and then going through that interview process, selecting our finalists, second interviews if necessary, and then providing us feedback for when the council comes to the final vote of who we're going to offer the position to. Those are all the things that are identified on the timeline. And those are the activities that we're suggesting that we incorporate a citizen with.
Okay. Then whatever you just said for your amended motion, because it was your motion, and you don't need another second for it. So, do you, Catherine, I'm not content with, I will go back and look at it. So could you please read back what you have and make sure that the motion that Councilmember Moffett is putting forth is clear before we vote on it?
Okay, so I can already tell you, I'm sure Councilmember Moffett will have to correct me, but here's what I have. I move to approve the timeline for the city manager's search to accept the weeks as presented, and at the May 19th City Council meeting, present names to help with the search after having solicited the citizens.
Is that correct, Councilmember Moffett?
It's close enough, and I just wanted to, I guess, clarify. The reason I don't use the term meeting dates is because the timeline does not have specific dates, it has weeks. So just for clarity of that ambiguous part of the motion.
No, I mean, it makes sense. Explain that. All right, so you have read that. What you have is what Councilmember Moffett says is accurate. So let's go ahead and do roll call on that, please.
Okay, let's see. Councilmember Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Phillips,
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Scripture,
Yes.
and Councilmember Milan.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so I am not going to read that back. We have approved what we just went through, or what you just read off a minute ago. And therefore, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is consideration to set up a workshop for council rules.
I'll make a motion. We set up a workshop for council rules and procedures within the next 5 weeks.
Can I get a second, please, or not? I would really like to remind council that that is actually not an optional item.
Should you remind council what the intent of it is? Or what the scope of it is?
Well, I thought that was part of what we put into the packet last time, or that was sent out. I'm not sure, actually, I'm not sure if it made it in the packet this time. I can't even find the minutes in this packet, or I finally found them. So in fact, so the council rules and procedures, are you asking me what those are?
I'm asking you what you want us to say they are, or like what the intent of this is.
Well,
we're getting something wrong. So what is the intent? That's what I'm asking. Yes.
It's not an intent. According to my lawsuit that I won, or that we settled on, that is a condition of the lawsuit that council will set council rules and procedures. So that is a condition of the lawsuit, and therefore of the settlement that came from that, then therefore that is not an option. That is something we do.
Okay, I just thought that was covered in the workshops we had previously about OMA and
no, it did not.
Whatever the one was. Okay.
And so how does it differ from, or what are we going to talk about that's not covered in the ordinance, specifically Chapter 2, Division 2?
Did you read the stuff that I sent with all of that information? Because it spelled out what council rules and procedures and what they were for and why they were important.
I did not see that in the council packet that I received. I may have missed it. I flipped through all of it, but I did not see anything that talked about it. And I looked for it because
you may be correct, because it was sent out in a previous packet and that was supposed to be included with this packet. So I'm not quite sure why it wasn't. That was sent out with a packet of information that went to all of council that said this will, on future agendas, and to get it to council way in advance so they had a chance to look at it and be ready for it. I do not know why it wasn't made part of this packet. I think you might be right, Councilmember Moffett, that it wasn't. However, it was sent out. I believe Chief Sarvello, did you not forward that? I think you forwarded it because I sent it to you as because Kathy wasn't available.
Whatever I got last week was asked to forward, I forwarded.
Yes. So it was forwarded at that time.
Well, this is just to set up a workshop to talk about it. We could change everything you sent in the workshop.
You absolutely can.
So
It
all
wasn't
we're-
even
all-
complete. It had questions all
yeah.
through it.
All this is setting up a workshop to apply or so we can cover ourselves in the lawsuit. So let's get together and go through
Okay.
this procedure.
If anybody wants to see it, it's in an email from Scott Saravello, dated April 25th, Saturday, April 25th. Says forward packet for Wednesday, April 29th workshop. There's 4 different things in that packet. So if you need to go back and look at it, just to let you know.
So this is from Giffords Webster, not from you.
No,
Right.
there was several items in that packet. There was not just one, there was several items that was in the packet.
There's 4. There was a memo on the council and goal setting workshop. There was a city manager evaluation material zip, goal budgeting and search calendar, and rules of procedure draft to begin discussion.
Setting. Principles.
It
Not
was
not to
sent
read
out.
everything.
Yeah, it was sent out to all of us.
Oh, +3. Okay, hold on. Oh yeah, I remember seeing this. Sorry.
I guess there was just no tie between this statement and this agenda item.
Yeah, I didn't tie the two together either.
So we get a second on this?
What was the first again?
What? Total. The motion? I think I made a motion to set up a workshop for council rules and procedures within the next 5 weeks.
Yes.
Okay, I'll support that.
And so for topic of discussion, I think it would be beneficial in this workshop that that our city attorney provides us exactly what the directive in the settlement agreement was and the goals of the settlement agreement, what objective we're trying to accomplish. Because I'm reading over, or I'm perusing this document, and it's, if I'm looking at the right one, the rule, is it the rules, one that's labeled rules and procedures? And it talks about, I'm reading about nepotism and all kinds of things that certainly weren't under the.
Let me explain what's in that packet. If you go through the entire set of rules and procedures, which generally, if you look at models that are all over the place by councils everywhere, generally they will put in as a full reminder. Okay, so I will go through the explanation for the public and for everybody else. This is what rules and procedures are. And it is a standard that people, when a council gets elected, one of the first acts that they do is they review and adopt that council's set of rules and procedures that are not necessarily included in the ordinance and the charter, because the more you include in an ordinance and charter, the less flexible things are. So it is the additional things. And generally, when you see a set of rules and procedures that are the council first gets to look at when new council members are elected and you have a start your first session, is they would have the charter, they would have the ordinance, they would have the ethics thing, they would have all the things we already have, and then it would go down and have different categories of other rules and procedures. So it's basically a packet, and it is a full set of things, so any new council member coming in gets that full picture of both what there's already supposed to do under the charter, ordinance, and all that stuff, obviously the ethics thing, and then into some of the things that the council, because those are non-negotiable until someone chooses to amend the charter, ordinance, whatever. But then they go through and start talking about the things that they may want to tweak. So I will give you one very simple example. One of the things that I put in there as a suggestion is the agenda. The agenda actually follows what is in the ordinance. However, the ordinance says this is what must be included. It doesn't mean it's what only can be included. And I suggested putting in front, up at the top of the agenda, an opportunity for public comment to speak on items on the agenda. And then at the end, an opportunity for public to speak on items not on the agenda, because we get to the end of a meeting and if someone has a thought and concern about what's on the agenda, they don't get the opportunity to do it until after we spoke and voted on it. Many people put that in the beginning and some don't. That would be something optional that a council would sit down together and say, yes, we think that's a great idea. We'd like to carry on that tradition or our rules and procedures for our next session. Or they might say, we think that's a horrible idea and we would like to take that out. So that is an example. And that there's several, goes down the list of what is in council rules and procedures. And that was a starting point. And if you read through it, you'll see there were several places where there were actual questions and comment about, well, you know, this or this, or here's a couple, lots of places like that. So, and again, this was not asking anybody to adopt anything or even discuss it tonight or, you know, get into a discussion about the content. It was simply to set a workshop in order to do so. That's all this was.
And based on what you just said, for example, rearranging the agenda, Mr. Nishai, you've addressed in the past that's something that is in our charter. And so that's what it would take to change that. So what I'm asking is to understand, you know, what's up for grabs. And you've explained several times before that changing our agenda would require a charter change. So I think that need to understand what things we can, you know, again, I'm looking at the ordinance right here and I see that, you know, there's stuff in the ordinances. We're not looking to rewrite ordinances. We're looking to, you know, make some of the changes that we're allowed to change. And I'd like an enumeration of what things we can decide on and what things are already part of ordinances and charters.
Well, obviously the charter is comprehensive in many respects. The settlement of the lawsuit talks, among others, about, you know, council shall establish a set of rules and procedures for council itself. It enumerates a couple of specific items, but otherwise leaves that pretty broad. And I agree with Mayor Scripture that, you know, a lot of councils out there do engage upon new council being sworn in. They do engage in establishing their own rules and procedures. To the extent that you're accomplishing such by setting first a workshop and then coming back to vote on whatever you narrow down to this workshop, I presume what I'm hearing that's the process that Mayor Scripture is outlining, you know, as a proposal. I personally think it makes sense on account of, instead of coming to to a council meeting to try to accomplish all this within, you know, the setting of a council meeting, you're at least narrowing down some of this process. Obviously, changing the charter is a very different kind of process. That's not, you know, something probably that we can accomplish within a period of time that we're talking about here. Changing ordinances is a different story. Adding to it is entirely different as well. When I reviewed, you know, what Mayor Scripture has submitted, obviously there was a lot of information that's already contained in, and I think it's provided. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's provided in the sense that this is what we already have, and then there's a list of other additional information there was a bunch of question marks, and I presume that, you know, the reasoning there is, what should we do about this? How should we frame this? I think it makes sense for council to engage in the process going forward. And this is, you know, council's determination, obviously, as to how you choose what path you choose for yourself to establish these rules and procedures. I presume for satisfaction of a settlement agreement, all you need is good faith effort. I don't know if that answers your question. I'm happy to address some more if you need.
It sort of does, I guess, and hopefully prior to engaging in this workshop, we'll have a more comprehensive list of what's to be discussed. But based on you know, the description that council or that Mayor Scripture made, like I said, things like the agenda is part of the ordinance, and I don't think that we were I don't think that that's part of the rules and procedures that were mandated to review as part of the settlement.
No, and the council will determine itself, obviously. It's the will of the five of you that will make the determination as to what you change and what not. I presume if you go through the process and you change not a single thing into what you have, you've already complied as far as the spirit of the settlement agreement is concerned. That's so, you know,
Nope,
as far as I'm concerned, that's all I need from you, and I'm perfectly satisfied. But as to what determination you make, that's certainly up to you.
The conversation.
Absolutely.
And that's all we need to do too.
Well, the conversation in the sense that I presume I imagine some actual good faith effort step ultimately beyond the workshop will be required. Some decision-making step, I mean to say.
And so that makes sense, and I appreciate that explanation. And I guess I just want to make sure that we get some very clear documentation and information going into this workshop so that it's not new information again.
I agree. I mean, to the extent whatever is needed from me, I'm happy to oblige. Obviously. So obviously there was a lot of information, and I can understand. I think your comment earlier was, we need some comprehensive. I don't think we need more comprehensive. In my humble opinion, we need to probably narrow. I agree with your later comment. We need to tailor down and narrow down and focus on whatever council obviously will make whatever determination, which in and of itself the document does, I think, because a lot of this information is already contained in. Then you'll make determination as to what you want to change and what you want to add and subtract ultimately.
Yeah. Brandon, I got a question.
Yes,
the other part of that thing was training. How do we stand in training? What kind of documentation do you need? I'm pretty sure I got all my training in, but how's the rest of the council doing? I mean, do we have our training in, or are we?
I know that council did a couple of sessions, one with respect to, did at least a couple of sessions, one with respect to OMA, one with respect to FOIA. I think that covers, I think, the specifics of the lawsuit. And then there's some other obligations, obviously, with respect to continuing professional education, such as MML webinars and conferences and the like. I haven't kept track with council, individual members of council, but I presume you all have in one extent or another, and I hope so.
How do we go from hope to know for sure?
I will verify on an individual basis. I will report back to you come next time.
All right, thanks.
To you, meaning all of council.
Okay.
You're on mute.
Yep, thank you, sorry. Did we ever get a second on that, or was it still council member Sampson?
I got a second from Council Member Moffett.
I think it was Councilmember Phillips who.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't believe it.
Was it? Oh.
I thought it was Councilmember Phillips.
Okay.
All right.
Got it.
Could you please read back the motion, just because we can, when we call the vote, everybody knows what they're voting.
To set up a workshop for council rules and procedures in the next 5 weeks.
All right, go ahead and call the vote.
Okay. Councilmember Phillips.
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson.
Yes.
Mayor Scripture.
Yes.
Councilmember Milan.
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett.
Yes.
Okay. Passed.
All right, so we are going to set up a workshop in the next 5 weeks when everybody gets calendars and the like to do that. Boy, it will sure be nice if we are actually able to meet in person, because I think things might go quicker. So next on the agenda is consideration of study sessions at 6:30 p.m. prior to council meetings for future meetings.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion. We set up study sessions at 6:30 prior to council meetings for all the future meetings.
All right, hearing no
Also-
second. Oh,
I'll
sorry.
support it. Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. Or unmute button.
All right,
So-
discussion.
So I'm very opposed to this. I don't see any reason for us not to have our discussions within the context of the council meetings. There is nothing that I think that we should be discussing in a study session that we're not discussing in a council meeting. And moreover, when the world opens up again, and we're all able to travel to our jobs and everyone's able to travel to their jobs and engage in other activities. Asking the members of the public to be there at 6:30 for whatever study session we have, however long it is, and then also come at 7:30 to participate in the process of a council meeting is, I think, unnecessarily burdensome on the public to participate. And I can't conceive of anything that we would discuss in a study session that shouldn't be discussed in a council meeting.
Could you please provide the genesis for this?
Actually, it's another one of those somewhat common practices out there. And in fact, tonight's meeting might serve as a very good example. So what a study session generally allows a council to do prior to. So first of all, what do we have to do in a regular session? We have to motion, we have to second, and then as you can tell what we've done tonight, as we get into the discussion after the motion second, apologize, then you start getting into, well, maybe we could amend the motion or this. What the study session allows to do is to take, and obviously there's going to be plenty of meetings where there isn't as much work on it or there isn't as much stuff. It allows council and staff that will be present to have some of that conversation without the need for the formal motion and whatever. It's all public, it's all open, there's nothing different, but it allows for that more free-flowing discussion. So by the time you get into the regular session where you go into the Robert Rules procedure, by that time, you've come to a position where you may already have a better idea on how to word a motion. You've already gotten some thoughts and feedback, and things generally will go much quicker in the actual meeting. So for example, organizations such as Anderson AEW, who is on the end of the agenda, would not have to sit through the extensive conversation that already might have got worked out in the beginning of the meeting, and instead we would have gotten to that quicker. And they don't have to be at the 6:30 session. It's open, but they don't have to. They can just be for this. But tonight's actually was a pretty good example of why you might want a study session ahead of a council meeting, which, by the way, once one looks at the agenda, it can be very easily suggested that the session could be waived for that meeting. I mean, these are things that could happen. But when there's a lot of work to be done, which there is, and a lot of discussion to be had, because some of these topics are not easy, they're not simple, study sessions before council meetings can be very helpful.
So I spent 5 years in the mayor's office, and in this city, they had what they called a pre-formal meeting, which was held the day before. They didn't have them before the meetings. They had them the day before this council meeting, and that agenda was not for the upcoming meeting. It was for future agenda items. So we would be basically discussing things 2 weeks out. I would say it was advantageous sometimes because all department heads were required to attend. Therefore, questions could be asked of department heads as opposed to us just having information. And probably what's next on the agenda with AEW, I'm assuming there's questions about why this bill looks the way it does. I'm assuming that's why it's there. So for things like that, it can be a good tool. However, we don't have that many things on our agenda that is that riveting that often. I doubt you'll get your department heads to want to attend these meetings, and without them, it's really not necessary. So, and that my question wasn't like what the purpose of the meeting is. I can understand that part. My question is, why do you feel it is imperative that we do this at this time?
Because I think when you say a lot of our agendas or whatever meetings don't have, I think that there is a lot of deferred work that has not occurred. And I think there's a lot of work to be done, and it's not easy work. It is complicated work and hard questions and hard answers. And I believe that giving more time to that rather than less would be helping the city move along and get to achieve some goals. And once we set those, which by the way would be another reason why we have things to do. So I just think we have a lot of work to do and we need more time to do it.
And I agree, we have work to do. And I think that that's the whole purpose of the council meetings, and that all that work and discussion and procedure should be held within the context of the council meeting. That's the whole purpose of them.
These meetings would be public, correct?
Of course.
Of course. And then would we tape them as well for the people who are concerned about that?
Of course. Why wouldn't we?
There's probably lots of reasons we wouldn't, but you know, like someone doesn't want it, someone might not feel it's necessary, or we don't want to pay someone an extra hour earlier. I mean, those are two reasons right off the bat, but I'm not opposed to doing it sometime. I don't want it to be an every time situation. I don't think our load would be good for every time. And just because we meet doesn't mean it's productive. I don't want to have meetings for the sake of having meetings. That's just not a good management technique. I'm all for transparency. If this were to ensure another level of transparency and eliminate some of the surprises that we sometimes feel we're encountering, I'd probably sign up today, right now. I'd say, let's do it. Let's set one for tomorrow, but we already have a meeting for tomorrow, so tomorrow. Given those situations, yes, but my personal viewpoint is not all the time.
And
I
so
agree
there's
with
nothing
not all
right
the
now
time.
that prohibits anyone from calling a public discussion workshop prior to any council meeting on an as-needed basis. And I think that's an excellent point, Councilmember Milan, is that instead of, you know, establishing this as a regular thing, I think that we agree to the practice that when there's something complicated or something that someone doesn't understand, that it would be prudent for us to have a little workshop-esque sort of thing for the hour before the council meeting to hash some things out or whatever, that we do that on an ad hoc basis. But I don't see any need for us to make it part of our regular processes, as all of us are willing to, you know, attend if there's something that warrants it. But to go ahead and clutter up everyone's schedule unnecessarily on a regular basis, I don't think is a good use of anyone's time.
I think it's unfair that we say that only when it's complicated, because the mayor can't, with us, anything can be complicated, or anything can, you know, something complicated can be easy. So it's really a good workshop, and it gives the public time to hear it a couple times, and they can ask questions, and we'll know before we go into council meeting how people feel, instead of finding out later on. So I think they're a wonderful thing to have.
It's only an hour, and I think that any time in it, I would say that it shouldn't just reside with the mayor's ability to call it. I think any one of us can suggest that we have a workshop to discuss something before, if we have questions or things that aren't clear, or we don't remember how conversations went at the previous meeting and we want to, you know, discuss that or anything like that, for any reason where we have a legitimate purpose that we want to meet together in a very informal, public and recorded manner, that we do it on a case-by-case basis. But to lock us in that it's going to happen before every meeting, again, I don't think is a good use of our time, and it's unnecessarily burdensome on the community that wants to stay engaged, because they're going to show up and they're like, oh, we got nothing to talk about, and we waste an hour of their time. So doing it only when we have a specific item to address is more respectful of everyone's time.
If we don't schedule it, we won't put it in our schedules that we got to be there at 6:30. You know, if we go through the summer, people are going to go, I can't make this. But now, if we do it now, we know we're going to be there at 6:30 every week, every meeting. So it's something you can plan on, not something that you know. I just know it's going to happen the first time somebody asks the mayor, you know, do you want this to happen? And 3 or 4 of us can't make it because we weren't planning it. if you do it now, we've planned it for the whole year or for the next 6 months or whatever it is.
I resent the implication that I would not adjust my schedule to take care of my duties. Certainly, if it's called, I think all of us respect our positions well enough to say that unless
Yeah.
there's some sort of extenuating circumstances, we're going to be there.
I think we clearly have shown we don't have a problem setting a meeting, right? Our calendar is pretty full right now. And that's a good thing. That means we're working towards the future and planning and taking care of business. I think that's great. But just to set meetings for the sake of them, I don't think that's wise right now. We have a lot coming on our plate. It's going to require extra time. And I'm not opposed to giving more time. But again, I don't want to sit in the sake of sitting in a room. And I want my time to be productive. And I just don't see the need for it personally.
I think you should just leave it as it's a possibility that we are open to having a 6:30 workshop before a city council meeting, if necessary. I agree. I don't want to do it every single council meeting and just sit there for an hour killing time if we don't have anything. But I think if we all pencil it in on our weekly calendars that we may have to be there at 6:30 on that Tuesday, let's do it with like a certain amount of days notice. You know, like we need to know by Friday if we're gonna need to be there Tuesday at 6:30.
Well, I'll tell you what, that would be amending the motion. And
How do you want me to amend it?
I don't. Why don't we let's just vote it up or down? Wherever our clerk went.
I'm still here.
Oh.
All right. So, Councilmember Sampson.
Yes.
Wait, can we clarify the motion?
I'm sorry.
Take the roll call.
I'm sorry. Yes, definitely. I move to approve the scheduling of future sessions at 6:30 p.m. prior to the council meetings. So Councilmember Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Scripture,
Yes.
Councilmember Milan,
No.
Councilmember Moffett,
No.
Councilmember Phillips.
Not as presented, no.
Okay.
All right. So that is voted down. So we have not approved any study sessions prior to council meetings. So moving, you know what, Lou, we need to move on. Okay. Let's move on to the list of bills as presented. I do believe I heard Councilmember Milan say that something about why, or we were going to hear why it was on there. And let's all not forget that we directed staff that if there was any bill presented that was over the norm, that they would pull that and bring that to us prior to it being paid if it was something out of the norm. And my understanding is that was something out of the norm, so that's why it was pulled and brought to us before being paid.
So it has not been paid?
And according to what we directed staff to do several meetings ago, I believe it has not been paid. They were told that
Lori, has it been paid?
We need a motion before we start talking about this. Like, Madam Mayor, pay the bills. And you need a second.
This bill actually has been paid.
Thank you.
I'll support it for discussion.
Okay.
So if the bill has been paid, I'm curious why it's there. Now, I looked at it because we don't often get invoices, right? We've only had them on a few occasions, and there's always a story behind it. So I looked at this one, and I work for an engineering firm, and we always bill by project, right? And this one looks like there are several different items on one invoice, and I don't know what their normal invoices look like. So when I looked at it, I just thought, oh, it looks like there's a lot of costs associated with the presentation that we had a couple months ago. And perhaps that was someone's bone of contention. I didn't know. So I guess what I want to know is, what is the bone of contention? Why is Because it
First of
has
all,
clearly
I
just
would
paid.
like to ask, why was it paid? Because that was something that was specific, all council, that was voted on. That was what said. If there was something that was out of the norm, that would be pulled and not paid until council had a chance to look at it. That happened and that happened last time. I can't remember what
There
came
was-
recently, and it was simply, so I'm actually not sure why it was paid, because that doesn't meet what was said several meetings back, but that's fine, whatever it's paid. But nonetheless, I believe the question at hand on this, or at least the question I looked at once I saw the bill, is how on earth does it cost $8,000 to do an hour-and-a-half presentation with materials that we have had in our possession for years? And I don't understand. And how do we even get a bill for that much without pre-approval? Because that's over the limit of what anybody's authorized to spend without getting extra approval. So I don't understand how that happened in the first place.
So
Those are my questions.
So it looks like, well, who called the meeting, first of all? Who called that meeting with AEW?
So there were discussions several months back, from my understanding, and Mr. Drinkwine he and I had discussions about having a capital improvement process meeting. We discussed that it would be a good idea to have such a meeting. And I believe, so this invoice is in because this was not budgeted. As far as I know, I was not aware that there was going to be a cost for the presentation. This was not a budgeted item, but when the bill came through, we did pull the check, and then Chief Cervello and I did have a discussion about whether or not to pay it. We did move forward with paying it because the AEW did do the work. They were instructed to do the work. The breakdown in process was, in my mind, that the person that instructed AEW to do the work did not ask for a quote, and that's where the breakdown was. AEW did do the work for this, the presentation. It was never discussed, as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief Cervello. I don't know what Kathy Leanhout's, if there were discussions, but I was absolutely unaware that there was going to be a cost for the meeting.
Well, okay, so I recall that meeting. I recall a banter in that meeting about who called the meeting, right? And I, Mayor Scripture, I succinctly recall you saying, I called this meeting. And then Mr. Drinkwine said, well, no, I called this meeting, or I've been planning this meeting for a long time. So regardless, whomever called the meeting knew that items had to be prepared for the meeting. And I would say that this invoice looks skewed because it makes it look like everything on there is just reflecting to like a PowerPoint or presenting a PowerPoint, getting it together. I don't think that would be true, right? Because didn't they update a bunch of documents in order to give us that presentation? They updated water, sewer, and some roads maybe. So if those things were updated and those are the costs, right? And they should be billed not to that account, but perhaps to the whatever department accounts. And I'm not an accountant there. I'm just thinking in terms of what my business does and how I would look at it if I were taking on that invoice, because I did look at it because it was there. And I was like, okay, what would the bone of contention be? And to me, that's what it is. So I'm looking at the names on my screen here and I see M. Hodges, so I'm assuming that's Matt, and I see Mike Smith. So it's either our former city clerk who's really bored, or it's Mike Smith from AEW, who was probably also wondering what the heck. So could we speak with someone who knows what this is all about so that it's not a bone of contention for anyone?
Matt could probably start with that. I know he had a conversation with Mike, and I believe that is Mike Smith from AEW on. But I know it went from Harry, Matt made the approval. Then it got to the point where the bill was unpaid, but they did the work and did the presentation. So I'm not sure at what point we can keep pulling out when there was prior approvals. And Matt had a conversation with Mike. I think Matt, he cut out on video. I think he's still on the phone.
The phone.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I wasn't sure.
Okay. Yeah, I had a conversation with Mike when I received the bill, Harry authorized the project, but he never requested a cost estimate on it, which AEW would have gladly provided had he requested a quote. I also asked Mike why Harry didn't do most of the work involved for the project, since these were all from documents AEW basically had already previously supplied the city. He said that the information had to be researched and to the specific areas that Harry suggested for improvements as examples in the presentation. I did ask Mike if there was any way they could revise the bill, and he stated this was a revised bill. The original bill was over 11,000.
Do we have someone from AEW on the phone? Or on the call, you know what I mean, at the meeting? Because you made the comment they had to sit through the whole meeting. Is there someone from the organization present?
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council, this is Mike Smith from AEW.
Okay. And
Excuse me, my name is Scott Lockwood. I'm also with AEW. I'm the Executive Vice President.
so can my question is, can we get a breakdown of everything that invoice was for? Was it just for the PowerPoint presentation that we were given, or were there other things that were being billed for on that invoice that maybe are attributable to other projects? And also, if you can talk about when those projects were requested, because if they were requested incrementally, then it might not have been over the $5,000 limit. It could have been, you know, do this project, this project, this project, and then it's all getting billed at once. So can you talk us through that, please?
So this is Mike Smith again. As previously mentioned by Lori, we had preliminary meetings that led up to the presentation to kind of discuss, you know, what kind of capital improvements that we wanted to include in this program. And in order to put this presentation together, we had to go back to the older documents, you know, the road evaluation, the water, the sanitary evaluations that were done years ago, and update that information in order to put this current presentation together. So the estimate or the invoice you see in front of you is for the preparation for, you know, those different parts of the presentation, the road, sanitary, and water, to get to those estimates and those visuals that you saw in the presentation. And in addition to that, included in that invoice is every Thursday, I'm normally in Clawson. I mean, haven't been since, you know, the stay-at-home's been ordered, but there's 2 line items in there for general engineering services and city hall meetings. Those are my Thursday visits to Clawson in the morning.
And what's the dollar number associated with that?
Let me pull it up real quick. Roughly 600, around $600 or so, $500, $600.
And so, Lori, this bill would be broken out and attributed to different areas, right? So the whole it was 8,000, right? Wouldn't all go towards, from what I'm hearing you say, is that there was other work on, you mentioned sewers and roads and that kind of stuff. And so would that piece, so that piece theoretically would be for an entirely separate project versus the presentation, and would it be booked that way? And I hear you saying it was requested, that was preliminary work that was done, and then the presentation was done, so that even though it looks like a big number, it really it really represents a bunch of different individual projects with probably an amount under the $5,000. Is that accurate? And Lori, if you can tell me how that would be booked on our accounting system.
Well, Let me clarify. All that work that was done was for preparation for this capital improvement preparation. Because if I were to take the old documents and just present that information to you guys that night, then that information would have been obsolete. Now, I needed to update that information to give you, current dollars and where we stand currently.
And you said you explained that in a meeting with Kathy Leanhouse and Mr. Drinkwine?
Correct. Yeah, it was discussed in meetings, and then I received an email from Kathy asking me to prepare the presentation.
So Kathy gave you the direction to go ahead and complete the work?
Correct.
And did she ask for a quote before you did it, or was there numbers discussed?
No, there were no numbers and no proposal requested.
Okay. So the direction came from Kathy Leanhouse?
Yes, I received an email from Kathy asking me to prepare the presentation.
So Councilmember Moffett, just to answer your question, my understanding of council's direction was any bill that came through that was out of the ordinary was to be presented separately. So that's why the bill was pulled. And there's no way for me to go through and break it up, I guess, accurately between roads and water and sewer, but I did break it up between those departments.
You did or you didn't?
I did, but it was somewhat arbitrary because I have no idea what percentage to actually attribute to each item.
Mr. Smith, the documents you prepared will be used for other reference items throughout the city in their day-to-day operations, correct? They're not just useful for that presentation?
You can use some of them for day-to-day operations, but most of it was prepared for that presentation.
Okay.
Like some of the estimates that we put together that we reviewed in City Hall with Lori, Kathy, and Harry, we put together some detailed estimates on some different road projects and water main projects that could be used within the next couple of years.
Okay.
Hi, this is Scott Lockwood again from AEW also, but I also believe it included a condition assessment for an updated condition assessment for roads, water, and sewer as well, which is a valuable tool on an annual basis, in determining what your capital improvements are going to be.
Do you have any idea the last time those were updated? Like, had you used the old ones? Do you have any inclination how old they may have been? How out of date they may have been?
Well, I didn't use previous capital improvement presentations to prepare this. I used previous road evaluations, our water main assessment. So these documents date back, anywhere from probably 4 to 12 years.
So I think we probably want to say thank you for your service and sorry to bring you into this. This is an internal thing that shouldn't have even been addressed to you, but perhaps next time on your invoice, break it down a little bit so people internally don't have to be shocked by anything. And I have a question for Matt. Matt, is there anything about this that you felt was inappropriate?
No.
Thank you. Are you content with the tools that they gave you that are now updated that you can utilize in your department?
Yeah, going forward, we can use some of it.
Thank you.
And I guess just for everybody's reference, is it possible for you to forward to council and our new interim city manager and our assistant city manager that email from Kathy Leanhouse giving you the directive to go ahead and complete the work? I think that would be beneficial to understand. And I think we're all in agreement that at the end of the day, an understanding of any work that, or any kind of service that's going to be over $5,000 requires a higher level of approval. This one apparently slipped through the cracks, but you got your direction. I think it's important for us to be around clarity around who you got your direction from.
Yes, I can find the email and forward it to you.
That'd be awesome. Thank you. You're on mute.
I'm sorry, thank you very much. In that case, can we go ahead and do roll call and approve the bills?
So did I have a first and did I have a motion and a second?
Yes,
Yes.
Lou and me.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Mayor Scripture,
Yes.
Councilmember Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Phillips,
Yes,
Councilmember Sampson.
Yes.
All right. So we have approved the bills as presented. And next on the agenda is any city attorney report.
Madam Mayor, if I were to have a city report, I think I would be tarred and feathered. So I will mindfully keep my peace tonight. Thank you.
You're a good man.
I'm not going to let you do that because in the last council meeting, you were going to do some investigation about what the council members could do to reduce or suspend their compensation during this crisis that we're all going through. We've, furloughed some city employees and everyone's struggling, and you're going to investigate that, and you have not gotten back to us.
I did. You're absolutely correct. I have not forwarded you the information. I do have all the information. It's safely stored in my. I have it safely stored, but I have not forwarded you, and I apologize. I will do so before tomorrow morning, first thing, as a matter of fact. So, and I could give you, the briefest update. Well, not update. This is the state of the law. I can give you the briefest information with respect to it, and I mean it like very brief. Ultimately, it's going to be a determination for all of council members as to whether you're going to be willing to pay taxes on something that you will end up having to donate, because the state of the law as we have it currently does not necessarily allow for you to simply do away with your compensation. The city must compensate you, unfortunately. I'll give you a couple of little
Mr. Nushai, can I interrupt real quick?
Yeah.
We obviously know the tax law. We've discussed it before. I will give a simple solution to your answer, or a simple answer to your question. The only way to do that would be to call back the compensation committee and for them to award a compensation of 0. And in which case, since there is no pay that has been done by our commission or our compensation committee, then there is nothing for us to pay taxes on or donate to charity and still pay taxes on, or any IRS issue. They don't have to pay us. But that's the only way. I mean, that would be a decision of the committee by our charter set to set our pay. If they set our pay at 0, the IRS can't say that we are now getting paid. But that would be something that we could not have anything to do with, that we couldn't tell the committee to rule that way.
Yeah,
we could not tell them that we don't, please meet so you can tell us that we can't make anything. That would circumvent Internal Revenue Service rules. However, if someone wants to call the compensation committee and let them, but
I think, and I guess in my analysis of it, I didn't even deal with that particular portion of it, because that actually, if I remember correctly, has been tried by council. And I think, there was a conversation, and maybe council, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think actually Councilmember Moffett may have asked this way back when. I recall, prior to myself being the city attorney, a question was asked with respect to this, and the committee actually dealt, at least with that understanding, dealt with the issue, and they came back with some dollar amount, not being willing to go to 0. So that's why I didn't even consider it. But at any rate, I'll give you the options with respect to, separate from that, And these are not ideal options by any stretch of the imagination. This is some sort of consensus that among, that exists in our municipal attorney listserv with respect to how to handle questions such as these, which come up fairly often throughout councils throughout the state. And basically the understanding is you would have to donate the money to a charity of choice, but you would be taxed on it ultimately. I'll provide those to you. I apologize for not doing so. I guess of the flurry of the things that we've been going through, I did not focus on that, and I apologize.
Any other, well, no, you said you had nothing?
Nothing else.
Chief Sarvello?
Just real quick, like I stated earlier, I've been working with the high school. They're going through some things to try to make this year memorable for their seniors. So this Friday, they are going to hang 2-foot by 4-foot senior pictures of everybody that is graduating along the fence on Elmwood. Typically, we don't allow things like that, but we're just trying to promote the kids that are graduating and celebrate them a little bit. I talked with Matt Hodges today to make sure that wouldn't interfere with any work they're doing or any thing at the park. The school's going to hang them themselves. They're going to socially distance when hanging them, and they're going to be up there for approximately a month, along with some other things that we're currently in the planning stage. But that is something that you will see around the city park on Friday night. They're doing the Friday night lights for 20 minutes to, congratulate the class every Friday night, turn on the park lights. So the posters should be hung before the lights come on Friday night. And I just wanted council to be aware of that and why they're up there.
What time was that again?
They turn on the lights at 8:20 and they keep them on for 20 minutes. And then on the scoreboard, it says 2020, there's 20s all over it to just kind of celebrate the kids of the class of 2020.
Everyone should go throw 20s. It would be fun.
That's all I have tonight.
All right. And we do have unfinished business because I still say we did not approve the minutes. I still say there was an error in the minutes, and that we should at least, if nothing else, correct the error in the minutes in order to approve them.
So can I suggest that we ask the city clerk to go back, watch the council meeting, make appropriate adjustments, and present them next week for our approval in lieu of having another lengthy discussion about it?
Is that something we can do, Mr. Nushai? Postpone approving the minutes till the next meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Then we don't need a motion. Do we need a motion for that? Yeah, we probably do, don't we?
You could do it by motion, Mayor, but you can just approve it any time.
So I move that we request that the city clerk review the video of the council meeting and amend the minutes as necessary, and present them at the next council meeting.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett,
Yes, and we're going to have a little discussion, but I also want to say, feel free to email us if you have any questions or need clarity, or call us. But yes.
okay, thanks. Councilmember Phillips,
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson,
Yes.
and Mayor Scripture.
Yeah. All right. At one point, I had some note somewhere about something, and it was from the schools, and now I don't remember. Oh, it was about Bridge Park. Honestly, I don't remember. So
This is Teacher Appreciation Week. Remember that.
that was one of them. Thank you. It is Teacher Appreciation Week, and yay, appreciate our teachers.
You bet.
I know that was one of them. And honestly, there was actually something about, it was about the feeding program.
Well, you think of that, can I just wish everyone happy Mother's Day? So whether you're a mother or acted as a mother, or were a mother to someone in any capacity, I hope that you enjoy your special day on Monday. And saw a Facebook post that reminded all the dads out there that the kids are in school, so there's no handmade projects from the teachers. So just make sure you take care of that.
I don't remember all the details, but I remember the dates and I remember why it was important. And I know that there's been stuff sent out. So I think I'd mentioned at the last meeting, or one of the last meetings, that we had a increase in people participating in the food program at the school for children. Also, you know, it's in the news and everything, the food bank usage is up, that type of stuff. So one of the things that has happened is that if anybody, for the bridge card, that would be like a food subsidy. Normally, the bridge card would be based on whoever would have received it last year. And obviously with this pandemic, there are people that would not have needed it last year that may need it now due to economic circumstances, everything that's going on. The deadline to apply for that, they have opened it up for people to go back and apply. The deadline for that, I believe, is May 7th. And I apologize because I actually thought I printed it out and now I've either lost my mind or whatever, but it is on the, I believe it's on the school website. I believe that they've been putting it out there. I just want to mention that because obviously, you know, just because this gets lifted in 10 days doesn't mean that everybody's immediately back to work and it's, you know, everybody's economically sound again. So that is something for anybody who maybe, that was very nice of Andrea to, who's on the school board, who sent it to me in the first place, to send it to me again. And yes, it is the pandemic EBT program, and it is out there, and it is on the school website. So if you look, and even if you were to just Google pandemic EBT program, but this is it doesn't normally work this way, but it's an opportunity for families who had not been receiving assistance in the past to get assistance now with the pandemic that's going on. So wanted to make sure we put that out there. And I know there's a group on Facebook that I can't remember the name of it, but it's also, you know, looking to help people in the community that need things. And that was another place that come up because of the food issue. So that's all. I had mentioned that I would do that. So it is the pandemic EBT program. And if there's anybody that could take advantage of that, I believe the date is May 7th that you would need to apply, and you would apply through the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. That is where you would go to the Michigan website. That is what I had to remember. So, and I'm sure there's other things, but there's not a lot to announce when nobody can leave their house. Not a lot of events. So I guess we're probably okay there. And in which case, I believe I would entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, public comment. Shoot me in the head, people. I don't know what I'm thinking. We will. Do we have, actually I lied, do we have any new business other than what I just said? Mother's Day, EBT, any other new business?
I just want to thank everyone for hanging in there tonight, listening to this nice meeting into whatever time it is. Good job. And earlier when Padma Kupa was here, I was thinking how fortunate we are that we have representatives who really like to put their time into Clawson, because Padma is diligent from her role. Penny Lubes is diligent from her Oakland County role. And then, you know, others as they have time, maybe not quite as often, but Clawson's unique in that everyone doesn't have representatives who actually want to show up at times that aren't just about voting. So we're very fortunate. We have people who care that live in the homes that vote, and we have people that we voted for that care. I think that's something we should be thankful for.
Okay, thank you. All right, then if there's no new business, now I am actually going to ask Lori to explain to everybody how to do public comment if they so choose, because she understands the Zoom process better than I do. So Lori, do you mind explaining that?
Well, I had asked earlier for everybody in group chat if they wanted to speak in public comment to just identify themselves. We didn't have anybody that asked to speak through chat. So I guess if anybody would like to speak, if you unmute yourself, then we can see you. or type your name in chat, and then Mayor Scripture can call on you.
That would be presuming I could read those super, super tiny words, which I kind of can. I do believe Susan Phillips just stepped, so I'm assuming since she's turned on her thing, she's looking to speak at public comment. Can we go ahead and recognize her, Lori? Because I think you control that.
I don't see a message from her.
No, she's on.
Oh,
She's right next to you in the Brady Bunch square. I think, Ms. Phillips, you might be able to just unmute your mic. And
yep,
go.
she should now.
Okay,
All of
you're
her
unmuted.
speakers are different.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you for the proclamation for National Day of Prayer. And I wanted to just differentiate. The National Day of Prayer Task Force event is a private event that is Christian, as opposed to the National Day of Prayer, which was a historic day started back in 1775 by our government. So that's why this event is specifically Christian. But, you know, other religions are certainly welcome to do things in their own events. So thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, this is so small. I'm looking for names. I don't see anybody who's putting in text chat. Is there anybody else that wants, however, to speak that way? I'm gonna go with going once for public comment, going twice for public comment, and I'm trying to give people a chance because this is confusing stuff for everybody. So going once, going twice, going 3 times for public comment. So I'm gonna go ahead and close public comment. And with that, now I could entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mayor, I move we adjourn.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Okay, Councilmember Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Phillips,
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson,
Yes.
and I'm sorry, Mayor Scripture.
Yes.
Done.
Well, I am sincerely impressed that none of you had to go take a quick second but me, and I'm going again. So thanks, everybody.
Goodbye.